In a universe where fate made a single mistake, the boundary between damnation and duty shattered like glass beneath the weight of divine rage. What happens when a servant of an Egyptian moon god, a fractured mind wielding vengeance as a blade, is cast into the one realm where redemption is both impossible and desperately sought? This is not a story of heroes. This is a story of broken souls colliding in the darkness, where justice becomes cruelty, where mercy becomes weakness, and where one man's mission will either save hell itself or condemn it to something far worse than eternal suffering. The moon is rising over the pit, and Mark Spector is coming. In the beginning there were boundaries, lines drawn by forces older than memory, separating realms of existence like chapters in a book no mortal was meant to read. Heaven stood in its eternal light. Hell burned in its perpetual shadow, and between them the living world spun its fragile dance of choice and consequence. But boundaries, no matter how ancient, are only as strong as the forces that maintain them. Khonshu, the Egyptian god of the moon, vengeance, and night travelers, had never been one to respect boundaries. For millennia he had operated in the margins, choosing avatars from humanity's broken pieces, soldiers with shattered minds, mercenaries with blood-soaked hands, those who walked the line between sanity and chaos. His current avatar, Mark Spector, was perhaps his most effective. A former mercenary, a man fractured into multiple personalities, each one serving a different aspect of Khonshu's endless mission. Mark Spector, Stephen Grant, Jake Lockley, 3 men in one body, 3 voices sharing one purpose. Protecting those who travel by night. But even gods can make mistakes, even gods can push too far. On a moonless night in Cairo, Mark Spector pursued a cult leader, a man who had sacrificed children to forgotten demons, opening doorways that should have remained sealed. The chase led through ancient catacombs beneath the city, through passages that predated the pyramids themselves. Mark cornered his prey in a chamber carved with symbols that hurt to look at, sigils that seemed to writhe in the torchlight. The cult leader smiled through broken teeth. "You serve a dead god, Spector, but I serve something that never dies. I serve the inevitable." He spoke words in a language that pre-existed human tongues. Reality screamed. Mark felt the world twist, felt dimensions pressing against each other like pages in a book being slammed shut. Khonshu's voice roared in his mind, a warning, a command, a desperate attempt to pull his avatar back from the threshold. But it was too late. The cult leader's ritual had punched through the veil between worlds, and Mark Spector was caught in the wound. He fell, not through space, through existence itself. The last thing he heard was Khonshu's voice, distant and fading. "Find your way back, my fist of vengeance. Find your way back or be lost in the spaces between forever." Then silence, then falling, then impact. Mark Spector opened his eyes to a sky the color of diseased flesh, stretching above a city built from architectural nightmares. Towers that defied physics leaned against each other like drunken giants. Neon signs advertised sins in languages he'd never seen. The air tasted of sulfur and regret. He pushed himself to his feet, his white suit, Khonshu's moon-blessed armor torn and stained with ash. Around him, demonic entities paused in their activities, their various eyes widening in shock. A being with too many mouths whispered to its companion, a creature made entirely of writhing shadows. "What is that?" "I don't know, it smells like the living world." "Nothing living comes here, not unless it's dead first." Mark's hand moved to the crescent-shaped blade at his side. His tactical mind, honed by years of mercenary work and divine service, immediately began assessing his situation. Unknown location, hostile environment, no clear extraction route, communications with Khonshu severed. He was alone. More alone than he'd ever been, even in the darkest days before the moon god found him dying in the desert. Stephen Grant's voice echoed in the chambers of their shared mind, British accent trembling with barely contained panic. "Mark, where are we? This doesn't look like Egypt. This doesn't look like anywhere on Earth." Jake Lockley's voice, rougher, more street-hardened, cut through. "Doesn't matter where we are. What matters is these things are looking at us like we're either a threat or a meal." Mark spoke aloud, his voice carrying the weight of command. "Back away, all of you. I don't want to hurt anyone, but I will if I have to." A demon with ram's horns and eyes like burning coals laughed, a sound like bones breaking. "Hurt us, you're in hell, stranger. We invented hurt." "Hell? The word settled over Mark like a shroud, not a metaphor, not a nightmare, hell itself. He'd been cast into damnation while still Bria. Before Mark could process this revelation, a siren wailed across the city, a sound that made every demon in the vicinity scatter like roaches in sudden light. In the distance, something massive was moving through the streets, something that made the ground shake with each step. A billboard flickered to life nearby, displaying the image of a blonde demoness with a too-wide smile. "Welcome to the pentagram. Remember, extermination day is coming. Stock up on blessed weapons and sanctified barriers at Carmine's Emporium, because when the angels fall, you want to be ready to die a second time." Extermination day, angels, blessed weapons. Hell had rules, hell had systems, hell had its own twisted order. And Mark Spector, Moon Knight, avatar of Khonshu, protector of night travelers, had just been dropped into its center. He looked up at the diseased sky, searching for the moon, his source of power, his connection to Khonshu, his anchor to purpose. But there was no moon here, only that sickly, swirling void of red and black, pulsing like an infected wound. For the first time in years, Mark Spector felt something he'd almost forgotten. Fear. Not for his life, death had never frightened him, but fear of being lost, fear of being separated from his purpose, fear of being trapped in a place where vengeance had no meaning because everyone here was already damned. What justice could he serve in a realm built on punishment? What night travelers could he protect in a place of eternal darkness? In the distance, rising above the chaos of hell's skyline, Mark spotted a structure that stood out from the surrounding madness, a hotel, large and ornate, with a sign that flickered with desperate hope. Hazbin Hotel, a place for wayward demons. Wayward demons, rehabilitation, hope in hell. It was impossible, irrational, but Mark had learned long ago that the impossible often pointed toward truth. He began walking toward the hotel, his white suit a beacon of light in the darkness, drawing stares and whispers from every shadow. Behind him, in the place where he'd landed, a small crater smoldered, and at its center, a crescent moon symbol burned into the brimstone ground, glowing with faint silver light. The first mark of Khonshu in hell. The beginning of something that would shake the foundations of damnation itself. Mark Spector had killed 47 men before his 30th birthday. He remembered each one. Their faces haunted the corridors of his fractured mind like ghosts refusing to move on. Some had deserved it, terrorists, monsters, those who preyed on the innocent. Others had simply been in the way, casualties of a profession that dealt in absolutes. But it was the 48th death that changed everything. His own. The memory played in Mark's mind as he walked through hell's streets, navigating around demons and damned souls, each step taking him closer to the impossible hotel. He couldn't help but remember how he'd become what he was. It had been in Sudan, a mission gone wrong. His employer, a sociopathic mercenary named Rael Bushman, had decided to massacre archaeologists excavating an ancient site, not for profit but for sport. Mark had objected. Bushman had beaten him nearly to death and left him bleeding in the desert sand beneath an ancient statue. The statue of Khonshu. Mark had died there watching the moon rise over the dunes, his life pouring out onto sand that had witnessed 10,000 deaths before his. He'd made peace with it, accepted it, a mercenary's death in a forgotten place. But the moon god had other plans. Khonshu had offered him a deal in that space between death and whatever comes after. Serve as his avatar, become his fist of vengeance, protect those who travel by night, in exchange life, purpose, power. Mark had accepted. He'd awakened wrapped in silver light, his wounds healed, his body strengthened, his mind changed, fractured. The trauma of death and resurrection had split his psyche, creating Stephen Grant, the wealthy philanthropist, the scholarly voice, and eventually Jake Lockley, the cab driver, the street-level information gatherer. 3 men, 1 mission. For years it had worked. Mark had served Khonshu faithfully, hunting those who preyed on the vulnerable, delivering brutal justice to those who escaped conventional punishment. He'd become Moon Knight, a myth whispered in criminal circles, a ghost story that kept bad people awake at night. But now, walking through literal hell, separated from his god, Mark wondered if this was Khonshu's plan all along. Had the moon god known this would happen? Had he wanted his avatar in hell for some larger purpose? Or had Mark simply been abandoned? You're thinking too loud, Stephen's voice echoed in their shared consciousness. I can feel your spiral from here, mate. We need to focus on survival, not existential dread. Survival, Jake's voice cut in harsh and practical. Look around us, we're in hell, actual hell. Survival might not be on the menu anymore. C pushed their voices down, focusing on the physical reality around him. The streets of the Pentagram, apparently the central city of hell, were a chaotic mixture of 1920s architecture, modern debauchery, and demonic excess. Demons of every conceivable form moved through the crowds. Some looked almost human. Others were walking nightmares that defied description. They gave him a wide berth. His white suit, though damaged, still carried the blessing of Khonshu. It glowed faintly in hell's darkness, an affront to the realm's nature. Several demons had tried to approach him in the blocks since he'd started walking. Each time, they'd gotten within a few feet and then recoiled as if burned. Divine power, even diminished, was not welcome here. Mark turned a corner and stopped. Before him, in all its impossible glory, stood the Hazbin Hotel. It was enormous, a sprawling structure that combined Victorian elegance with Art Deco excess and hints of something darker underneath. Neon signs proclaimed its mission: redemption, rehabilitation, check in and change your eternal fate. It was absurd. Redemption in hell was like offering ice to beings made of fire. But absurd didn't mean impossible. Mark approached the entrance, his hand resting on the crescent blade at his side. The hotel's front doors were massive, carved with intricate designs that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them. He raised his fist to knock. The door exploded open before his knuckles made contact. A young demoness stood in the doorway, blonde hair wild, eyes bright with manic enthusiasm. She was dressed in a red tuxedo, and her smile was wide enough to be slightly concerning. Behind her, Mark could see a lobby that defied spatial logic, somehow larger inside than outside, decorated in shades of red and gold. "Hi," the demoness practically shouted. "Welcome to the Hazbin Hotel. I'm Charlie Morningstar, and you are absolutely, definitely, 100% not supposed to be here." Mark studied her despite her demonic features, the fangs, the eyes, the slight hint of something inhuman in her movements. There was an earnestness to her that seemed genuine. Naive, perhaps, but genuine. "I didn't choose to be here," Mark said, his voice level. "I'm looking for a way back." Charlie's expression shifted from manic enthusiasm to genuine concern. Back where? Wait." She leaned closer, sniffing the air around him. Her eyes widened. "You're alive. You're actually alive. How are you alive and in hell? That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works." Behind Charlie, another figure emerged from the lobby's shadows. A tall, slender demon in a red pinstripe suit, with a smile that looked permanently carved into his face. His eyes were old, impossibly old, and they studied Mark with the intensity of a predator assessing prey. Well, the demon said, his voice carrying the crackling warmth of an old radio. "What have we here? A living soul in the pit, wrapped in divine light, carrying the stench of Egyptian sorcery. My dear Charlie, it seems your little hotel has attracted a rather unique guest." Mark's hand tightened on his blade, every instinct screamed danger. This demon was powerful, ancient, dangerous in ways that went beyond physical threat. "I'm not a guest," Mark said, "I'm just passing through." The radio demon's smile widened impossibly. "Passing through, oh my curious friend, nobody passes through hell. We're the destination, not the journey. But where are my manners? Alastor, pleasure to meet you. Quite the pleasure." He extended a hand. Mark didn't take it. The tension in the air grew thick. Charlie stepped between them, her hands raised in a placating gesture. Okay, everyone let's all calm down, sir. You look like you've been through something terrible. Why don't you come inside and we can figure out what's happening? That's what we do here. We help people, or well, demons, but you're clearly in trouble and we don't turn away anyone who needs help." Charlie, Alastor purred. "He carries divine power. He is anathema to this realm. Allowing him entry could have consequences." "Then we'll deal with consequences," Charlie said firmly, her voice gaining strength. "This is my hotel, Alastor, my mission, and I say he's welcome." Mark looked between them, the idealistic princess and the sinister demon, clearly at odds yet somehow working together. The dynamics here were complex, layered with tensions he didn't fully understand. But he was alone in hell, cut off from Khonshu, with no clear path home. He needed information, he needed time, he He needed allies, however strange. "One night," Mark said. "I'll stay one night, gather information, and then I'm gone." Charlie's face lit up like dawn breaking. "Yes, perfect. Oh, this is wonderful. Our first living guest. Come in, come in." As Mark stepped across the threshold of the Hazbin Hotel, he felt reality shift slightly, a subtle wrongness, as if he'd crossed more than just a physical boundary. Behind him, the door swung shut with a finality that made his warrior instincts scream. Alastor's voice whispered, too quiet for Charlie to hear but perfectly clear to Mark. "Welcome to the Hotel Moon Knight. I do hope you survive your stay." The lobby of the Hazbin Hotel was organized chaos wrapped in vintage aesthetics. Mark's tactical mind immediately began cataloging details. Exits, 3 visible, likely more hidden, potential threats, every demon present, defensive positions, limited, mostly ornamental furniture, and weapons of opportunity, numerous if improvised. Old habits died hard, especially when those habits had kept him alive through 100 combat situations. Charlie led him deeper into the lobby, talking rapidly about the hotel's mission. "So basically, we're trying to rehabilitate sinners, help them redeem themselves so they can get into heaven. It's never been done before and most people think it's impossible, but I believe that everyone deserves a second chance, even if they're, already dead and damned. Oh, let me introduce you to everyone." She gestured around the room. A cat demon lounged at the bar, drinking something that looked flammable. A small cyclops demon cleaned glasses with mechanical precision. A moth-like demon in revealing attire scrolled through a phone, barely glancing up. "That's Husk at the bar," Charlie continued, nifty cleaning everything within reach and angel dust on the couch. "Everyone this is, she turned to Mark, realizing she'd never gotten his name. "Mark," he said simply, no last name, no title. In enemy territory, information was currency. "Mark," Charlie repeated cheerfully. "He's our guest, and he's alive somehow, which is super weird, but we're not going to judge, right, gang?" Husk, the cat demon, looked up from his drink with the weary eyes of someone who'd seen too much. A living person in hell, great, because this place wasn't complicated enough. Angel Dust, the moth demon, raised an eyebrow. "Living, huh, gotta say, sugar, you're either incredibly stupid or incredibly lost, possibly both." Nifty zipped over with supernatural speed, circling Mark and examining his torn white suit. "Ooh, you're filthy, and you smell weird, like moon dust and violence. Can I clean you?" Before Mark could respond, Alastor materialized beside them, his presence announced by the crackle of radio static. Now, let's not overwhelm our guest. I'm sure he has many questions. The primary one being, I imagine, how does one escape hell when one is not technically dead?" Mark met the radio demon's gaze. Those eyes held knowledge and malice in equal measure. "You seem to know more about my situation than I do." "I know many things," Alastor replied, his smile never wavering. "I know you carry the mark of Khonshu, the Egyptian god of the moon and vengeance. I know you're bound to divine purpose, which makes you fascinating. I also know that divine beings cannot simply enter hell. There are rules, cosmic laws. Yet here you stand, breathing, bleeding, very much alive, which means something broke, something important." Stephen's voice stirred in Mark's mind. He's right, this shouldn't be possible. The separation between realms isn't just physical, it's fundamental for us to be here. "The boundary was damaged," Mark said aloud, thinking of the cult leader's ritual, the screaming reality, the sensation of falling through existence itself. A ritual punched through the veil. I was caught in the wound. Alastor's eyes gleamed. How delightfully catastrophic. A wound in reality's fabric, and you're the thread pulled through. "Tell me, Moon Knight, can you feel your god from here?" Mark hesitated, then shook his head. "The connection is severed. I'm alone." "Not alone," Charlie interjected quickly. "You're with us now, and we're going to help you get home, right after we help you understand what's happening. Maybe you being here is like meant to be. Maybe you're supposed to help with redemption somehow." Mark almost laughed, the idea of him, a man with 47 kills and a fractured psyche, helping with redemption was darkly absurd. "I'm not a therapist, princess. I'm a weapon. That's all I've ever been." "That's not true," Stephen's voice whispered internally, pained. "We've helped people, protected people. We're more than just violence." "Are we?" Jake's voice countered. "Strip away Khonshu's mission and what's left? A broken mercenary playing dress-up in a white suit." Their internal argument was interrupted by an explosion that shook the hotel's foundations. Screams erupted from outside, not the casual suffering that seemed constant in hell, but genuine terror. Everyone rushed to the windows. Mark got there first, his combat reflexes putting him ahead of the demons. Outside, the streets had erupted into chaos. Demons were fleeing in every direction from something massive approaching from the CI. Ty's center, at first Mark thought it was some kind of vehicle, but as it drew closer, he realized the horrible truth. It was a demon, a singular demon, easily 50 feet tall, made of writhing shadows and jagged bone. Its face was a mockery of human features, stretched and distorted, and it was hunting. Every few steps it would reach down and grab a fleeing demon, crushing them in its massive fist. The victims didn't just die, they disintegrated, their essence consumed. "What is that thing?" Mark demanded. Husk had gone pale, an impressive feat for someone already dead. "That's an overlord, one of the big players, looks like. Fuck, that's Vox's new enforcer. He must be making a move on someone's territory." "Overlords control sections of hell," Charlie explained, her voice tight with worry. "They're incredibly powerful demons who have amassed strength through deals and consumption. They usually don't attack this openly unless they're sending a message," Alastor finished, his radio voice dropping to something darker. "How interesting. It appears my old rival is feeling bold." The massive demon overlord stopped directly in front of the hotel. Its voice boomed across the district, electronically distorted and amplified. "Alastor, I know you're in there, you outdated fossil. Vox sends his regards. Time to update or be deleted." Before anyone could react, the overlord raised its massive fist and brought it down toward the hotel. Mark's body moved on instinct. Years of combat training overrode logical thought. He dove toward Charlie, tackling her out of the path of falling debris as the hotel's front wall exploded inward. They hit the ground hard. Mark covered Charlie with his body as dust and rubble rained down. His white suit glowed brighter, some residual blessing from Khonshu creating a protective barrier around them. When the dust settled, Mark looked up to see Alastor standing calmly amid the destruction, not a speck of dust on his red suit. His smile had changed. It was no longer performative, but genuine and terrifying. "Well," Alastor said, his voice crackling with barely contained power, "it appears my retirement has been interrupted. How unfortunate for everyone involved." Shadows erupted from Alastor like living things, writhing tentacles of darkness that shot toward the massive overlord outside. The enforcer demon roared and swatted at them, but Alastor's shadows were faster, wrapping around its limbs, pulling it off balance. The battle had begun. And Mark, still holding Charlie in his arms, realized that his first night in hell was going to be far more complicated than he'd anticipated. Charlie looked up at him, her eyes wide. "You saved me. You're alive, you don't know me, you have no reason to protect anyone here, but you saved me." "Reflex," Mark muttered, helping her to her feet. "I protect those who need protecting, it's what I do. Even in hell." Mark looked out at the battle unfolding, Alastor's reality-warping power against the Overlord's brute strength, demons fleeing in terror, the hotel crumbling around them. "Especially in hell," he said. Because if there was one thing Mark Spector understood, it was that darkness existed everywhere. And where darkness existed, there would always be those who needed a protector. Even if that protector was as broken and damned as the souls he defended, the battle raged for 17 minutes. Mark knew because he counted every second, his mind automatically tracking time even as chaos consumed the hotel around him. He pulled Charlie behind the bar with Husk, the most defensible position in the ruined lobby, and watched as Alastor unleashed power that defied comprehension. The radio demon moved through reality like it was a suggestion rather than a law. His shadows didn't just strike the massive overlord, they rewrote the space around it, creating impossible angles, trapdoors in midair, dimensions that folded in on themselves. The enforcer demon roared and thrashed, its electronically amplified voice distorting as Alastor's vintage aesthetic literally overwrote its modern technological nature. "Is he always like this?" Mark asked Husk. The cat demon took a long drink from his bottle. "You mean terrifying? Yeah, that's Alastor's whole thing, the radio demon, one of the most powerful overlords in hell, supposedly retired, definitely insane. Charlie thinks she can trust him." Husk's tone suggested his own opinion differed significantly. Angel Dust had taken cover nearby, watching the fight with professional interest. $10 says Alastor rips that guy's head off within the next minute. I don't bet against Alastor, Husk muttered. Mark studied the fight with a tactician's eye. The enforcer was stronger, larger, clearly built for destruction. But Alastor fought with precision, targeting weak points, using the demon's own momentum against it, controlling the battlefield. It reminded Mark of his own combat style, technical, efficient, brutal. When necessary. Then Alastor's shadows found the enforcer's core, the central mass of energy that powered its massive form. The radio demon's grin widened impossibly. Let me illuminate the lesson, my pixelated friend, Alastor's voice boomed, crackling through the air like an old broadcast. Technology has no place in hell. We are classical here, traditional, and tradition always wins. The shadows tightened. The enforcer demon exploded in a shower of static and screaming data, its essence scattered to the infernal winds. Where it had stood, only a small, pathetic demon remained, barely 3 feet tall, trembling. Alastor appeared before it in an instant, leaning down with that terrible smile. Do tell Vox that his message was received, and that my response will be personal. The small demon fled, scrambling through the rubble. Silence fell over the destroyed lobby. Alastor straightened, adjusting his monocle and brushing a non-existent speck of dust from his sleeve. Well, that was invigorating. Charlie, my dear, I believe we'll need some renovations. Charlie emerged from behind the bar, looking at the destruction with a mixture of dismay and determination. This is the 3rd time this month someone's attacked the hotel. The 3rd time. Why can't people just leave us alone? Because you threaten the established order, Mark said, standing. Redemption in hell undermines the entire power structure. If demons can be redeemed, if they can escape, then the overlords lose their cattle, their currency, their power. Everyone turned to look at him. That's, Charlie started, then paused. That's actually exactly right. How did you know? I've seen it before, Mark replied, thinking of crime lords and corrupt officials, of power structures built on the suffering of those beneath them. Different setting, same dynamics. People in power don't like change, especially change that threatens their control. Alastor studied Mark with renewed interest. Perceptive, very perceptive. You're beginning to understand hell's true nature, Moon Knight. This isn't a place of random chaos, it's a carefully maintained system, and systems resist disruption. Charlie's expression shifted to something more determined, which is exactly why we need to keep trying. Mark, come with me, I want to show you something. She led him through the ruined lobby and up a partially collapsed staircase, navigating the damage with practiced ease. They climbed several floors until they reached what appeared to be Charlie's office, a surprisingly normal room with a desk, bookshelves, and a large window overlooking the pentagram. On the wall were dozens of charts, plans, rehabilitation programs, all meticulously detailed in Charlie's handwriting. This is my life's work, she said softly. Every demon here, Husk, Angel, Nifty, even Alastor in his own way, they're all here because they want something more. They want to change, and I truly believe, that everyone deserves that chance. Mark looked at the charts, at the pathways to redemption carefully mapped out, at the hope crystallized in ink and paper. It was naive, idealistic, probably doomed to fail. It was also the most human thing he'd seen since arriving in hell. Your father, Mark said quietly, piecing together implications. Morningstar, you're Lucifer's daughter. Charlie nodded. Yeah, the devil's kid, which makes this whole redemption thing kind of ironic, doesn't it? The person who invented hell trying to undamn the damned. She laughed, but there was pain in it. Dad thinks it's pointless, says souls are sent here for a reason, that redemption goes against divine judgment, but I can't accept that. I can't believe that eternity is set in stone the moment you die. Stephen's voice stirred in Mark's mind. She's arguing against predestination, against the idea that people can't change. She's arguing against her own father's entire existence, Jake added. That takes guts. Mark looked at Charlie, this young demoness with her father's legacy on her shoulders and her own dreams pulling her in the opposite direction. He understood that burden, the weight of expectations, the struggle between duty and desire. Why tell me this, he asked. I'm not staying. I need to find a way back to my world. Charlie turned from the window, her eyes meeting his. Because in the 17 minutes you've been here, you've done something no other demon has done. You protected me, not because I made a deal with you, not because you wanted something, but because it was the right thing to do. That's not how hell works, Mark. That's how people work, good people. I'm not a good person, Mark said flatly. I've killed 47 people. I serve a god of vengeance. I'm a weapon with a fractured mind and blood on my hands. And yet you threw yourself between me and falling rubble, Charlie countered. You counted every second of that battle, making sure everyone stayed safe. Don't tell me you're not good when your actions say otherwise. The accusation hit harder than Mark expected. He'd spent so long defining himself by his violence, by his purpose as Khonshu's fist, that he'd forgotten other people might see him differently. Jake's voice, surprisingly gentle. She's got a point, Hermano. Stephen, perhaps we've been looking at ourselves through the wrong lens. Mark pushed their voices down. What do you want from me, Charlie? She stepped closer, her expression earnest. Help us. While you're here, while you're figuring out how to get home, help us prove that redemption is possible. You're living proof that the boundaries between realms can be crossed. Maybe you being here isn't an accident. Maybe you're supposed to help bridge the gap between judgment and mercy. I don't bridge gaps, Mark said. I hunt monsters. Then hunt them here, Charlie replied immediately. Hell is full of monsters, demons who torture the weak, overlords who enslave souls, entities that exist only to cause suffering. If you need a mission while you're trapped here, make it that. Protect those who can't protect themselves. Isn't that what your God would want? Mark felt the truth of her words like a physical blow. She was right. Khonshu's mission, protect those who travel by night, didn't specify which realm. If Mark was trapped in hell, if he couldn't return home immediately, then he needed purpose. And purpose in hell meant the same thing it meant everywhere else. Justice. He looked out the window at the pentagram, at the demons and damned souls moving through streets built on suffering, and made a decision that would change everything. One condition, Mark said. I work alone. I don't answer to you, to Alastor, to any overlord or power in hell. I do this my way. Charlie's smile could have lit the darkest corners of damnation. Deal. They shook hands. Neither of them knew they'd just set in motion events that would shake hell's foundations and draw the attention of forces far more terrifying than any overlord. The moon had come to hell, and judgment would follow. 3 days passed in hell, though time moved strangely in a realm without true day or night. Mark established a routine, training in the hotel's damaged gymnasium, studying the overlord territories from Charlie's maps, and venturing into the pentagram to learn hell's geography. He avoided direct confrontation, focusing on observation. Information was power, and Mark had survived impossible situations by understanding his enemies before engaging them. But on the third night, if it could be called night, everything changed. Mark was in his assigned room, a surprisingly normal space that Charlie had insisted he take. He sat on the bed, his white suit laid out before him, examining the tears and burns. The fabric was damaged but still held Khonshu's blessing, still glowed faintly in darkness. He missed the moon god's voice, missed the certainty of purpose that came with divine instruction. Without Khonshu, Mark felt unmoored, floating in an existence that shouldn't contain him. Stephen's voice emerged, scholarly and thoughtful. We should consider the theological implications. We're in hell, but we're not dead. We're under Khonshu's blessing, but we can't hear him. What does that mean for the nature of divine power? It means we're screwed, Jake replied bluntly. Divine power doesn't work here. We saw it. The suit barely protects us. We're cut off from our God, and we're surrounded by demons who want to either kill us or use us. Not all of them, Stephen countered. Charlie genuinely wants to help. Charlie's naive, Jake shot back. Good intentions don't mean shit in a place built on suffering. Mark listened to them argue, their voices echoing through the chambers of their shared mind. Usually he could moderate their conflicts, find middle ground. But lately, the divisions between his personalities felt more pronounced, as if hell itself was widening the cracks in his psyche. Then the temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Frost formed on the windows, Mark's breath misted in the air, and hanging in the space above his bed, impossible and magnificent, the crescent moon appeared, silver light cutting through hell's eternal twilight. Khonshu's voice crashed through Mark's mind like thunder. My fist, my vengeance, you live. Mark fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the sudden reconnection. It felt like coming up for air after drowning, like finding solid ground after falling through void. Khonshu, he gasped aloud. How? The wound in reality closes slowly, the moon god's voice boomed. I have forced a connection through immense cost. Listen carefully, for I cannot maintain this long. The crescent moon pulsed, and with it came visions, not just sight, but understanding poured directly into Mark's mind. He saw hell from above, saw its structure and systems, the territories of overlords, the flow of suffering and power. He saw something else too, cracks in hell's foundation, weak points in its cosmic structure, places where the boundary between realms had grown thin. And he saw why. The extermination, Mark whispered, understanding flooding through him. Angels from heaven come to hell periodically to cull the demon population. Each time they cross the boundary, they weaken it. And hell's overlords have been making deals, reaching into other dimensions, pulling power from beyond. They've been destabilizing the boundaries from both sides. Yes, Khonshu confirmed. Hell was meant to be sealed, a separate realm for separate purpose, but Lucifer's domain has grown ambitious, hungry, the boundaries erode, and now YOU and Y Avatar have been pulled through the wound. How do I get back? That is not the question USHOULD ask. Mark looked up at the crescent moon, feeling Khonshu's ancient consciousness pressing against his mind. What do you mean? You were not sent to hell by accident, Mark SBECTOR. You were sent there by necessity. The cult leader's ritual targeted you specifically. He knew who you were, what you SERVED, and he opened the gateway deliberately. Ice formed in Mark's stomach. Why? Because someone in hell wants an avatar of divine justice within its borders, someone who believes that your presence will accomplish something crucial. I do not know WHO, I do not know their goal, but you were pulled into hell for a purpose. The implications were staggering. Mark had assumed his presence was accidental, a cosmic mistake, but if he'd been deliberately brought here. Then I'm part of someone's plan, Mark said, a pawn in a game I don't understand. When have you ever been otherwise? Khonshu's voice carried something that might have been amusement. You serve me, I serve justice. Justice serves balance. We are all pawns of larger forces. The question is whether you play your role consciously or blindly. Tell me what to do. I cannot, the connection is breaking, but know this, Charlie Morningstar is central to whatever plan unfolds, the daughter of Lucifer seeking to redeem the damned. Her mission threatens multiple powers, protect HER, understand her goal, and when the time comes, choose carefully. Choose what? Whether to serve heaven's judgment, hell's rebellion, or the path between that no one has yet WALKED. The crescent moon began to fade, Khonshu's presence slipping away like water through fingers. Wait, Mark called out, am I still your avatar? Do I still serve you? Khonshu's final words echoed as his presence vanished. You have always been more than MY Avatar, Mark SBCTOR. You have always been a man seeking redemption for yourself. Perhaps in hell, you will finally find it. Then silence. Mark knelt alone in his room, frost slowly melting, the temperature returning to hell's ambient warmth. His mind raced with the revelations. Someone had pulled him to hell deliberately. Charlie was central to a larger plan, and Khonshu, his god, had suggested that Mark's true purpose might be redemption, not delivering it, but achieving it himself. Stephen's voice quiet, he's right, you know, we've always used the mission to avoid dealing with ourselves. The violence, the fractured mind, the guilt, we've called it service when it might just be avoidance. Jake, or maybe we're exactly what Khonshu says, a weapon, and weapons don't need redemption, they need targets. Mark stood, pulling on his damaged white suit. The fabric settled around him like a second skin, familiar and comforting despite its tears. He needed to talk to Charlie, needed to understand her mission more deeply. If Khonshu was right, if Mark had been brought to hell as part of some larger plan involving the princess's redemption project, then everything changed. He wasn't just trapped in hell. He was a game piece in a cosmic strategy that involved the daughter of the devil, the boundaries between realms, and the very nature of damnation itself. Mark left his room and headed for the lobby. The hotel was quiet, most residents asleep or pursuing their own activities. But as he descended the stairs, he heard voices, Charlie and Alastor, talking in hushed tones. "Can't keep pretending this is normal," Charlie was saying. "A living human in hell, carrying divine power, showing up right when the overlords are making moves. It's too coincidental." "My dear," Alastor replied, his radio voice low, "nothing in hell is coincidence. Everything is design. The question is, whose design and to what end?" "Do you think he's dangerous?" A pause, then Alastor laughed, that crackling vintage sound. "Oh, Charlie, he's not dangerous, he's catastrophic. A wild card in a game that's been played the same way for millennia. But whether he's catastrophic for us or for our enemies," another pause, "that remains to be seen." Mark stopped on the stairs, listening. "I'm going to trust him," Charlie said firmly. "He saved my life, he's agreed to help while he's here, and I believe that people can change, can be more than their worst moments. I have to believe that, or this whole hotel is pointless." "Your optimism is admirable," Alastor said, "and likely to get you killed. But I suppose that's why you need me around, to ensure your idealism doesn't destroy you before it destroys everyone else." Mark heard Charlie laugh, genuine and warm. "You're such a pessimist." "I'm a realist, there's a difference." Mark continued down the stairs, making his presence known. Both demons turned to look at him. "Mark," Charlie said, surprised, "you're up late or early, time is weird here, are you okay?" Mark looked at her, this princess of hell with her father's legacy and her own dreams, central to plans she might not fully understand. Then at Alastor, the radio demon, powerful and mysterious, playing his own game with rules Mark didn't yet comprehend. "I need to tell you something," Mark said, "about why I'm really here and about what might be coming." Charlie's expression grew serious. "Okay, I'm listening." And Mark began to explain Khonshu's message, not knowing that his words would set in motion the very events his god had warned about. Outside the hotel, in the shadows of the pentagram, dozens of eyes watched. Overlords and demons, angels and entities beyond comprehension, all waiting to see what the Moon Knight would do. The game had begun. And hell would never be the same. The confession took an hour. Mark told them everything, Khonshu's message, the deliberate nature of his arrival, the warning about Charlie being central to a larger plan. He left nothing out, not the cracks in reality's boundaries, not the suggestion that multiple powers were moving in shadow, not even Khonshu's final words about Mark's own need for redemption. Charlie listened with growing alarm. Alastor's smile never wavered, but his eyes grew sharper, more calculating. When Mark finished, silence settled over the lobby like ash. Finally, Charlie spoke. "So someone wants you here. Someone powerful enough to arrange a ritual that would punch through dimensional boundaries and pull a living human into hell. And they think I'm important to whatever they're planning." "Yes," Mark confirmed. "Well," Alastor said, his radio voice crackling with dark amusement, "that is quite the revelation. It appears our little hotel has attracted attention from forces beyond hell's usual players. How exciting." "Exciting?" Charlie turned on him. "Alastor, this is serious. Someone is manipulating events, using Mark, possibly using me, for some plan we don't understand. That's not exciting, that's terrifying." "My dear girl," Alastor replied, standing from his chair with fluid grace, "everything in hell is manipulation. Every conversation is a negotiation. Every relationship is a transaction. The only difference now is that we're aware we're being played. That gives us advantage." Mark studied the radio demon carefully. Alastor's casual attitude didn't match the subtle tension in his posture, the way his fingers tapped against his cane in an irregular rhythm. The demon was worried, Mark realized, genuinely concerned beneath the theatrical facade. "You know something," Mark said, "something you're not telling us." Alastor's grin widened. "I know many things, Moon Knight. For instance, I know that approximately 3 weeks ago, several overlords held a secret meeting, something that hasn't happened in decades. They've been competitors, enemies even, but suddenly they're coordinating. I know that Heaven's last extermination was unusually brutal, almost vindictive. And I know that Lucifer himself has been absent from hell for the past month, which is unprecedented." Charlie's eyes widened. "Dad's gone, where?" "If I knew that, darling, I'd be far more powerful than I am," Alastor replied. but his absence creates a vacuum, and into that vacuum others will move. It's simple power dynamics. Mark's tactical mind pieced together the implications. The overlords are consolidating, heaven is escalating, Lucifer is absent, and someone decided this was the perfect moment to bring me here. All of this is connected. But how? Charlie asked, frustrated. What does a living human with divine power have to do with hell's politics? Stephen's voice stirred in Mark's mind, analytical and precise. We're an anomaly, a variable that shouldn't exist in their calculations. Perhaps that's exactly why we're here, to disrupt whatever status quo they're trying to maintain. Before Mark could voice this thought, the hotel's front doors exploded inward for the second time in 3 days. Mark's body moved on instinct, positioning himself between Charlie and the entrance. His hand went to the crescent blade at his side, drawing it in one smooth motion. The weapon gleamed with silver light, Khonshu's blessing still present despite the god's distant connection. Through the shattered doorway stepped a demon unlike any Mark had seen before. She was elegant, composed, with moth-like features similar to Angel. Dust but radiating authority. She wore a red dress that looked expensive even by hell's excessive standards, and her eyes held the calculating intelligence of a master strategist. "Valentino sends his regards," she said, her voice smooth as silk and twice as dangerous, "and his invitation." Angel Dust, who'd been watching from the couch, suddenly went rigid. "Velvet," he breathed, and there was genuine fear in his voice. The moth demon Velvet smiled. "Hello, Angel, it's been a while since you've visited the studio. Valentino is starting to think you've forgotten your contract." "I'm on sabbatical," Angel said, trying for casual but landing somewhere near terrified. "Charlie's hotel thing, remember? Val agreed to it." "Val agreed to a week," Velvet corrected, her smile sharpening. "It's been 3, and during your absence, production has suffered. Valentino is disappointed." Mark didn't fully understand the dynamics at play, but he recognized the power imbalance immediately. Angel was trapped in some kind of deal, and this Velvet was here to enforce it. "Angel stays," Charlie said, stepping forward despite Mark's protective stance. "We had an agreement with Valentino. Angel is a resident of this hotel, and he's under my protection." Velvet's gaze shifted to Charlie, and something cold moved behind her eyes. "Princess, how noble, but your father's name carries less weight than it used to, especially when he's nowhere to be found. And Valentino is part of the V's now, a united overlord front. We're done playing games with your little redemption fantasy." "The V's," Alastor's voice cut through the tension like a knife. He stepped forward, shadows writhing around him. "How delightfully unoriginal. Vox, Valentino and Velvet playing at being a power block. Do tell, my dear, does Vox still wake screaming from nightmares about our last encounter?" Velvet's composure cracked slightly. "Your yesterday's news, Alastor. The radio demon is obsolete. We're the future of hell's power structure, and we don't have time for—" She stopped mid-sentence, her eyes finally landing on Mark. Her expression shifted from dismissive to shocked to calculating in the space of a heartbeat. "You," she breathed, "you're the anomaly, the living soul." Her smile returned, but it was different now, hungry. "Valentino is going to be very interested in you." Mark raised his blade slightly. "I'm not interested in him." "That's adorable," Velvet purred. "You think you have a choice, sweetheart, you're in hell. The moment you arrived, you became a commodity, and we're very good at acquiring commodities." She snapped her fingers. The walls exploded. Not metaphorically, literally exploded, torn apart by claws and teeth and demonic strength as dozens of contracted demons poured into the hotel. They moved with military precision, clearly trained, clearly prepared. This wasn't a casual attack. This was a planned extraction. Mark's combat training kicked in instantly. He assessed threats, identified the primary attackers, calculated his response time. 3 demons coming from the left, fast but uncoordinated. 5 from the right, slower, heavily armored. 2 dropping from above, aerial advantage but predictable trajectory. "Hey, moved." The crescent blade sang through the air, cutting through the first demon with surgical precision. The creature howled and dissolved into ash, not dead but banished, its physical form destroyed. Mark pivoted, using the momentum to drive his elbow into the second demon's throat, then brought his blade up to block the third's claws. Around him, chaos erupted. Alastor's shadows lashed out in every direction, tearing through attackers with casual brutality. Charlie had transformed partially, her demonic features more pronounced, horns growing from her head as she unleashed blasts of golden fire. Even Husk had entered the fight, using some kind of playing card-based attack that sliced through demons like paper. But there were too many. For every demon they dropped, two more appeared. The V's had sent an army, and armies won through numbers and attrition. Mark found himself back-to-back with Angel Dust, both of them fighting desperately. Angel used multiple arms, 6 in total, Mark realized, to fire weapons that appeared from nowhere, while Mark's blade cut through anything that got close. "This is because of me," Angel shouted over the chaos. "They want me back." "No," Mark replied, cutting down another attacker. "They want me, you're just the excuse." He was right, the demons were pressing toward him specifically, trying to separate him from the others, trying to isolate and capture. This was an extraction operation, and Mark was the target. Velvet stood in the center of the destroyed lobby, untouched by the violence, watching with satisfaction. Valentino was right, the living soul is the key. Capture him, and we control everything. Mark felt Jake's voice surge forward, angry and protective. Like hell they will. But even Jake's aggression couldn't change mathematics. They were outnumbered, surrounded, and being systematically overwhelmed. Then the temperature dropped. Not like when Khonshu had appeared, this was different, colder, more absolute, the kind of cold that preceded death. Every demon in the room froze. Through the shattered entrance walked a new figure. She was tall, elegant, and carried herself with the authority of someone who'd never been challenged. Her skin was pale as snow, her hair black as void, and her eyes held the frozen emptiness of entropy itself. "Velvet," the woman said, her voice like ice cracking, "you were told to wait." Velvet actually stepped back, fear plain on her face. "Rosie, I didn't know you were." Clearly, Rosie interrupted, her gaze swept across the room, landing on Mark, her eyes narrowed. "So, this is the Moon Knight, the living soul, the anomaly." She smiled, and it was worse than any demon Mark had faced. "How delightful, you're even more interesting than reported." Alastor surprisingly bowed slightly. "Rosie, what an unexpected pleasure." "Alastor," she acknowledged, "your hotel seems to attract trouble, or perhaps you attract trouble to it." Her attention returned to Mark. "I'm Rosie, overlord of Cannibal Town and mediator of certain disputes. I'm here to extend an invitation from parties who wish to speak with you, civilly, without all this unpleasant violence." "And if I refuse?" Mark asked. Rosie's smile widened. "Then the violence continues. But this time we won't be trying to capture you. We'll simply eliminate everyone you've met since arriving, starting with dear Charlotte here." Charlie moved to protest, but Alastor put a hand on her shoulder, stopping her. Mark looked around the destroyed lobby, at the demons he'd fought beside, at Charlie who'd offered him shelter despite the danger. He thought about Khonshu's words, about choice, about the path between judgment and rebellion. He lowered his blade. "I'll hear them out," Mark said, "but I go alone, and if this is a trap, I promise you, all of you, that I'll tear through every demon in hell to get back here." Rosie laughed, delighted. "Oh, I like him. He has no idea how outmatched he is, but he threatens anyway. Adorable." She turned to Velvet. "Call off your dogs. The Moon Knight comes with me, peacefully." Velvet hesitated, clearly wanting to argue, but whatever authority Rosie held was enough. She snapped her fingers, and the attacking demons retreated, melting back into the shadows. Charlie grabbed Mark's arm. "Don't do this. We can fight them off, we can." "No," Mark said quietly, "we can't, and if I don't go, they'll kill you to get to me. I won't let that happen." "Very noble," Rosie said, "shall we?" Mark followed her toward the entrance, looking back once at the destroyed hotel, at Charlie's desperate expression, at Alastor's calculating gaze. He was walking into a trap, he knew it, they knew it. But sometimes, the only way to understand the game was to let yourself be moved like a piece on the board. At least for a while, Rosie led Mark through the pentagram's twisted streets with the confidence of someone who owned the very ground beneath her feet. Demons parted before them like water around a ship's prow, not from fear but from respect. Whatever Rosie was, she commanded genuine authority. They walked in silence for several blocks before she finally spoke. "You're wondering why I'm helping you. I'm wondering what you're getting out of this, Mark corrected. In my experience, nobody helps without expecting something in return. How very cynical, Rosie said, pleased. And accurate. I'm helping because the situation has become complicated. Multiple factions are moving simultaneously, and you're at the center of it. I represent certain interests that prefer stability over chaos. Stability in hell, Mark said dryly. That's an oxymoron. You'd be surprised, hell has its own order, its own rules. When everyone understands their place, things run smoothly. But lately, the old order is crumbling and no one's quite sure what's replacing it. That uncertainty makes powerful beings nervous, and nervous, powerful beings make mistakes, catastrophic mistakes. They turned down an alley that seemed to fold space, emerging in a completely different district. Here, the architecture was older, more Gothic, less neon excess, and more Victorian nightmare. Rosie stopped before an enormous building that looked like a cathedral and a slaughterhouse had merged. We're here, she said. Inside, you'll meet representatives from several overlord factions. They want to talk. I suggest you listen. And if I don't like what they have to say... Rosie's smile was genuinely warm. Then you'll fight your way out, probably kill a dozen demons in the process, and die heroically but pointlessly. I'd rather avoid that. You're far more valuable alive and cooperative. She opened the massive doors and... Mark stepped inside. The interior was vast, a single chamber with a ceiling that disappeared into shadow. Around a circular table sat 7 demons, each one radiating power that made Mark's tactical instincts scream danger. He recognized Velvet, sitting between 2 others who must be Vox and Valentino, the V's. The other 4 were strangers, but their presence suggested overlord status. At the head of the table, in a chair that resembled a throne, sat a demon who looked almost human. Almost. His eyes gave him away, too old, too knowing, holding the weight of centuries. Moon Knight, the demon said, his voice surprisingly gentle. Welcome, I am Zestial, eldest of Hell's current overlords. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. I didn't agree, Mark said flatly. I was threatened into compliance. Let's not pretend this is voluntary. Vox laughed, the sound distorted through electronic filters. He was a demon with a television screen for a head, displaying his face in crackling pixels. I like him. He's honest, refreshingly direct. Directness won't save him, Valentino purred, a moth demon in a red suit, smoke curling from his cigarette. But it might entertain us before we decide what to do with him. Mark remained standing, refusing to sit. His hand stayed near his blade. You wanted to talk. Zestial studied him for a long moment. Very well, to be direct, you are an anomaly, a living human in hell, carrying divine blessing, serving an Egyptian god. Your presence violates several cosmic laws and threatens the balance we've maintained for millennia. I didn't choose to be here, Mark said. But you were brought here deliberately, Zestial continued. By ritual, by design, by someone's will. We want to know whose and why. I don't know. We think you do, Velvet interjected. Or at least you know more than you're admitting. You've aligned yourself with Charlie Morningstar's ridiculous hotel. You've gained Alastor's interest, and you're asking questions about Hell's power structure. That suggests purpose. Mark's mind raced. They thought he was part of a larger plan, which was partially true, except he didn't know what that plan was. He was as blind as they were, just a piece being moved by forces he didn't understand. But admitting ignorance showed weakness. And weakness in enemy territory was death. Maybe I'm exactly what I appear to be, Mark said. A lost weapon looking for a way home. Maybe there's no grand conspiracy. Maybe I'm just an accident. We don't believe in accidents, one of the other overlords spoke, a female demon with spider-like features. Everything in hell happens for a reason. You're here for a reason. The question is whether that reason aligns with our interests or threatens them. And if I threaten them? Valentino's smile widened. Then we remove the threat permanently. Before Mark could respond, reality twisted. The chamber's shadows came alive, writhing and expanding, and through them stepped a figure that made every demon at the table tense. Alastor. The radio demon manifested in the center of the room, his smile wide and terrible, static crackling around him like an aura. Gentlemen, ladies, how delightful to find you all conspiring together. Almost like old times, except I wasn't invited. How rude. Vox's screen face flickered with barely controlled rage. Alastor, you have no authority here. Authority? Alastor laughed, the sound distorting through radio frequencies. My dear Vox, I need no authority. I simply go where I please, and it pleases me to ensure my hotel's guest isn't bullied by a committee of nervous overlords playing at politics. Zestial stood slowly. Alastor, you overstep. This matter concerns all of us. The Moon Knight's presence threatens. Threatens what? Alastor interrupted, his voice dropping to something darker. Your power, your carefully maintained territories. Good, let it threaten. Hell has grown stagnant, comfortable in its cruelty. Perhaps an anomaly is exactly what we need to shake things loose. The tension in the room escalated instantly. Several overlords stood, power crackling around them. Mark found himself in the center of what was rapidly becoming a battlefield between Hell's elite. But Alastor's attention fixed on Mark, and in those ancient eyes, Mark saw calculation that went beyond the immediate moment. The radio demon was playing a longer game, one that involved Mark in ways he didn't yet understand. Come Moon Knight, Alastor said, extending his hand. These bureaucrats bore me, and I suspect they bore you as well. Let's return to the hotel where at least the destruction is honest. Mark looked at the offered hand, then at the overlords surrounding them. Every instinct screamed that Alastor was dangerous, possibly more dangerous than all the others combined. But Alastor had at least been honest about his danger. These others hid their threats behind diplomatic language. Mark took Alastor's hand. Reality folded. They emerged back in the Hazbin Hotel's destroyed lobby, where Charlie and the others had begun cleanup. Everyone looked up in shock as Alastor and Mark appeared through a portal of shadow. Alastor, Charlie rushed over. What happened? Are you okay, Mark? Fine, Mark said, pulling his hand from Alastor's grip. He turned to face the radio demon. Now tell me why you really did that. You didn't rescue me out of kindness. Alastor's smile never wavered. You're learning. No, I didn't rescue you from kindness. I rescued you because you're valuable, because the overlords want you controlled or eliminated, which means keeping you free serves my interests. And because, his smile somehow widened further, because I'm very curious to see what happens next. What do you mean? You're a catalyst, Moon Knight. Your presence accelerates events that were already in motion. Charlie's hotel threatens the overlord's power structure. Heaven's exterminations grow more aggressive. Lucifer is absent, and now you, a living human carrying divine power, appear at the precise moment when Hell's foundations are most unstable. That's not coincidence, that's narrative structure. Stephen's voice stirred. He's talking about us like we're part of a story, like events are being orchestrated. That's because they are, Alastor continued, as if he could hear Stephen's thoughts. Hell is theater, Moon Knight. We're all actors playing our parts. The only question is whether we're aware of the script or blindly following it. Mark studied him carefully. And you think you're aware? I think I'm more aware than most, Alastor replied, which is why I've positioned myself at this hotel, why I'm invested in Charlie's impossible dream, because I suspect that when the curtain falls on this particular act, the hotel will be at the center of everything, and I intend to be standing in the spotlight when that happens. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Moon Knight, the overlords won't stop. Tonight was a warning. Next time they'll send everything they have. I suggest you prepare accordingly. Learn to fight as Hell fights, not with honor, but with absolute brutality, because honor down here is just another word for weakness. Alastor vanished in a swirl of shadow and static, leaving Mark standing in the ruins of the lobby. Charlie approached cautiously. Are you really okay? Mark looked at her, this princess trying to redeem the damned, this young woman who'd somehow become central to Hell's political upheaval. He thought about Khonshu's warning, about choices and paths between judgment and rebellion. No, he said honestly, I'm not okay, but I'm still standing, and as long as I'm standing, I'm fighting. Fighting for what? Mark looked out at the pentagram through the hotel's shattered wall, at the city of sin and suffering. For the same thing I've always fought for those who can't protect themselves, for justice, even if justice in Hell is just another word for revenge. Charlie smiled sadly. That's not justice, Mark, that's just more violence. Sometimes, Mark replied, violence is the only language people understand. He walked away, heading for his room, leaving Charlie staring after him. Neither of them noticed the small device Alastor had left behind, a listening mechanism, hidden in shadow, recording everything. The radio demon was indeed playing a longer game. And Mark Spector was now a player whether he wanted to be or not. Mark was training in the hotel's restored gymnasium. Charlie had insisted on repairing it first, claiming that Mark needed space to maintain his combat readiness. He was working through forms, muscle memory taking over as his mind wandered. He'd spent the intervening days learning more about hell systems, the exterminations where angels descended annually to cull demon populations, the overlord territories carved up like a map of medieval kingdoms, the contract system where demons traded pieces of their souls for power or protection. It was all so structured, so organized. Hell wasn't chaos, it was bureaucracy with teeth. Stephen had been fascinated by the historical parallels. Jake had been disgusted by the exploitation. Mark simply cataloged it all as intelligence, information that might become useful. But tonight, training alone in the gym, he felt something shift in the air, a tension like the moment before a storm breaks. His hand went to his blade instinctively. The walls exploded inward. Not with demons this time, with something worse. They moved too fast for normal perception, creatures wrapped in holy light that burned Mark's eyes to look at directly. Angels, not the gentle beings from religious paintings. These were warriors, soldiers, entities built for divine violence. Exorcists, he realized, heaven's executioners. But the extermination wasn't scheduled for months. Why were they here now? The lead angel, or what Mark assumed was the leader, wore golden armor and carried a spear that crackled with divine energy. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of absolute certainty. Mark Spector, Moon Knight, avatar of Khonshu, you are in violation of cosmic law. Your presence in hell while living destabilizes the boundary between realms. You are hereby sentenced to immediate termination. Mark raised his blade, silver light meeting golden. I didn't choose to be here. I was pulled through against my will. Irrelevant, the angel replied. Your continued existence threatens the separation of heaven and hell. You will be eliminated. Resistance is futile. The angels attacked as one. Mark moved on pure instinct, years of combat training guiding his body faster than conscious thought. He ducked the first spear thrust, rolled under the second, came up with his blade singing through the air. The crescent edge caught an angel across the chest, and she screamed, not in pain but in outrage, as Khonshu's blessing cut through her divine armor. But there were too many. 6 angels, all trained warriors, all wielding weapons blessed by heaven itself. Mark fought brilliantly. He used the gymnasium's equipment as obstacles, forcing the angels to fight on terrain he controlled. He exploited their overconfidence, their assumption that divine right made them invincible. He drew on every technique Khonshu had taught him, every lesson learned in 100 battles. It wasn't enough. An angel's spear caught him across the ribs, tearing through his suit, burning divine fire into his flesh. Mark gasped, stumbling, and another angel's blade opened a wound across his back. He fell to one knee, blood pooling beneath him. The lead angel approached, spear raised for the killing blow. You fought well, mortal, but fighting against heavens will only delays the inevitable. You should have accepted your fate. Mark looked up at her through blood and pain. I stopped accepting fate the day I died in the desert. I make my own choices now. He lunged, not at the lead angel, but at the one to her left, the youngest looking, the one who'd hesitated fractionally before each attack. His blade found the gap in her armor, and she dissolved into light. The other angels recoiled in shock. They'd expected to kill a human. They hadn't expected the human to kill them back. That moment of shock was all Mark needed. He moved like death itself, Khonshu's training flowing through him, turning pain into fuel. His blade sang in silver arcs, each strike precise, each movement economical. 2 more angels fell before they recovered from their surprise. But Mark was slowing. Blood loss, exhaustion, and the accumulating wounds from divine weapons were taking their toll. His vision blurred, his legs felt weak. He wouldn't survive this fight. Jake's voice urgent, we need to run now. Stephen, we can't run, there's nowhere to go. Mark, then we die fighting, at least we die on our feet. The remaining 3 angels circled him, more cautious now, their overconfidence replaced by wariness. The lead angel's expression had shifted from righteous certainty to something darker, anger at having been challenged, at having lost soldiers to a mere mortal. "You're already dead," she hissed. "You just don't know it yet." She was right. Then the hotel's front entrance exploded for the 3rd time in a week, and through the smoke and debris strode Charlie Morningstar in her full demonic form. She was transformed, horns curving from her head, eyes blazing with hellfire. Wings spread wide in terrible majesty. This wasn't the naive princess playing at redemption. This was the daughter of Lucifer Morningstar, heir to hell's throne, radiating power that made the angels step back involuntarily. "You dare," Charlie's voice boomed with authority that shook the building's foundations. "You dare enter MY domain, attack MY guest in MY hotel. Do you know who I am?" The lead angel recovered quickly. "You're a demon, the princess of hell, and you're harboring a criminal who threatens cosmic stability." "He's a guest seeking redemption," Charlie shouted back. "That's the entire point of this hotel. Or does heaven oppose redemption now? Does God himself forbid the possibility of change?" The theological challenge hung in the air. The angels looked uncertain. They'd been sent to eliminate a threat, not engage in doctrinal debate with Lucifer's daughter. Into that uncertainty walked Alastor, his smile sharp as broken glass. Behind him came Husk, Angel Dust, even Small Nifty, all armed, all ready to fight. "Well, well," Alastor purred, "Heaven's little death squad paying us a visit. How undiplomatic. I thought there were rules about unscheduled exterminations, or have the angels decided that rules no longer apply to them?" More demons were arriving, residents of the hotel, other entities drawn by the commotion. The situation was escalating rapidly, angels and demons facing off in what could become a full-scale battle. The lead angel looked around, calculating odds that had suddenly shifted dramatically. She'd brought 6 soldiers to kill 1 man, now she faced an army. "This isn't over," she said finally. "The Moon Knight's presence in hell is an abomination. Heaven will not permit it. Next time we'll bring more than 6 soldiers, we'll bring legions." "Next time," Charlie replied, her voice cold, "you'll be met by hell's full forces. My father may be absent, but I am not, and I will not allow heaven to dictate who can and cannot seek redemption in my domain." The angels retreated, dissolving into light, leaving only the lead angel for a final moment. She looked at Mark, bleeding and barely standing, and spoke directly to him. "Your God has abandoned you, mortal. Khonshu cannot reach you here. You are alone, dying slowly in a realm that hates you. Surrender to heaven's judgment and will grant you mercy. Continue this defiance and you'll know suffering that makes hell look gentle." Then she was gone. Mark collapsed, his blade clattering to the floor. Charlie rushed to his side, her demonic form receding as she knelt beside him. "Mark, stay with me." "Alive," Mark managed through bloody lips. "Still alive." "Barely," Husk muttered, examining the wounds. "These are divine burns, they don't heal naturally. He needs serious medical attention." "Can we even treat divine wounds?" Angel asked. "That's not exactly standard demon medicine." Alastor knelt on Mark's other side, his expression unreadable. "Interesting, the angels want him dead badly enough to violate protocols. That confirms he's more important than anyone realized." He looked at Charlie. "My dear, we need to keep him alive, not just for moral reasons, but because whatever game is being played, we need our Moon Knight on the board." Charlie glared at him. "He's not a game piece." "Everything's a game piece," Alastor replied. "The question is whether we play him or let others play us." Mark's vision was fading, blood loss pulling him toward unconsciousness. He heard voices arguing about treatment, about moving him, about what to do next. But beneath it all, he heard something else. A whisper, distant, familiar. Khonshu's voice, faint but present. "Not yet, my fist. Your mission is not complete. Hold on, I am coming." Mark smiled through the pain. His God hadn't abandoned him. And if Khonshu was coming, then heaven had made a terrible mistake. Because bringing the wrath of an Egyptian god into hell would make the recent conflicts look like children's games. The blood moon was rising. And judgment was coming for everyone. Mark woke to darkness. Not the familiar darkness of night or unconsciousness, but something deeper, absolute, a void where even concepts like light and shadow cease to have meaning. He tried to move and found himself weightless, suspended in nothing. "Hello," his voice made no sound, swallowed by the infinite dark. "You are dying, Mark SBCTOR." Khonshu's voice came from everywhere and nowhere, resonating through Mark's consciousness rather than his ears. The moon god's presence filled the void with silver light that pushed back the darkness inch by inch. "I know," Mark replied, somehow able to speak in this space between life and death. "The angel's weapons, divine fire burns through everything." "Not everything, not you, not yet." The light intensified, and through it, Mark saw Khonshu manifesting, not the skeletal bird god formed from earth, but something more ancient, more primal. The deity appeared as pure Mo. On given shape, shifting between forms too quickly to track. "You are my fist, my vengeance, my avatar. I will not permit heaven to claim you before your purpose is fulfilled." "What purpose?" Mark asked. "You said I was brought to hell deliberately, that I'm part of someone's plan, but whose plan? Yours, heaven's, hell's." Khonshu's laughter was like crystal bells shattering. "Mine, I arranged your arrival in hell." The revelation hit Mark like a physical blow. "What?" "The cult leader's ritual was no accident. I guided his research. I led HIM to the texts that would open the dimensional wound. I ensured you were in position to be pulled through. You were always meant to fall into hell, Mark SBCTOR." Rage flooded through Mark, hot and consuming. "You used me. You manipulated me into this nightmare. I sent you where you were needed most." "Needed for what?" The light shifted, and suddenly Mark could see, not with his eyes, but with understanding poured directly into his mind. He saw hell's foundations, the cosmic structure that maintained the separation of realms. He saw the cracks forming, weakening, as angels crossed boundaries during exterminations and demons reached beyond their prison through contracts and rituals. He saw something else too, a convergence point, a moment approaching when all the fractures would align, when the boundary between heaven and hell would shatter completely. And at the center of that convergence stood Charlie Morningstar, the princess of hell, trying to redeem demons and thus prove that damnation wasn't eternal. "Heaven and hell are locked in eternal stalemate," Khonshu explained. "Neither can destroy the other without violating cosmic law, but both seek advantage, both push boundaries, and now both have pushed too far. The separation breaks. When IT breaks, reality breaks with it." "And I'm supposed to stop that?" Mark asked bitterly. "One man against the forces of heaven and hell." "You are not one man, you are three minds in one body. You are my avatar, carrying divine power into a realm that cannot touch divinity without burning. You are the anomaly, the variable, the one piece neither side predicted." The visions intensified. Mark saw possible futures branching out like roads in fog. In some, the boundary shattered and reality dissolved into chaos. In others, heaven invaded hell completely, turning damnation into absolute extinction. In still others, hell's overlords broke free and consumed the living world in demonic fire. But in one future, one narrow, unlikely path, balance was maintained. And on that path walked Mark Spector, bleeding but alive, standing between Charlie Morningstar and the forces trying to destroy her. "You are the bridge," Khonshu said, "living but in hell, divine but serving vengeance, loyal to me but fighting for her. You exist in the SBACES between categories, and in those SBACES, you can do what neither heaven nor hell can manage." "What's that?" "Chosen." The word hung in the void with terrible weight. Heaven believes in absolute judgment, hell believes in absolute punishment. Neither believes in choice, in the possibility of change, but you do. You have changed, Mark SBCTOR, from mercenary to avatar, from broken to functional, from lost to purposeful. You are living proof that redemption exists. "I'm not redeemed," Mark said bitterly. "I'm just better at directing my violence." "Is there a difference? You kill to protect rather than profit. You serve justice rather than self. You have taken your DARKESD ASBECTS and turned them toward light. If that is not redemption, what is?" Stephen's voice stirred in their shared consciousness. "He's right. We've spent years thinking we're broken, but maybe we're just rebuilt, differently than before, but not necessarily worse." Jake, or maybe the moon god is playing us like he plays everyone, using pretty words to manipulate us into his schemes. Both voices had a point. Why are you showing me this? Mark asked Khonshu. Why tell me the truth now? Because you are dying and because saving you requires your consent. I can heal your wounds, Mark SBCTOR. I can burn the divine fire from your flesh and restore your body, but doing so will bind you to hell more deeply. You will become partially native to this realm, no longer fully living but not truly damned, a hybrid, an impossibility made manifest. What does that mean? It means you will never leave hell entirely. Even if you return to Earth, part of you will remain here tied to this realm. You will walk between WORLDS, and that separation will hurt constantly, a reminder of what you sacrificed. Mark considered this, eternal pain in exchange for survival, connection to hell in exchange for the ability to continue fighting. It was barely a choice at all. Do it, Mark said. You accept the cost. I accept. Heal me, bind me, whatever it takes. I have a mission to complete. Khonshu's presence swelled, filling the void with blinding sylve. Our radiance, then rise in my fist, rise in my vengeance, rise, moon knight of both WORLDS, and show heaven and hell what happens when they underestimate the power of choice. Pain exploded through Mark's body, not the burning agony of divine fire, but something else, something transformative. He felt Khonshu's power pouring into him, rewriting him on a cellular level, binding his living essence to hell's dead foundation. It was agonizing. It was glorious. It was rebirth through suffering. Mark screamed and the sound echoed across dimensions. In the Hazbin Hotel's medical room, Charlie watched helplessly as Mark's body convulsed on the bed. She'd been sitting vigil for 3 days while he hovered between life and death, his wounds refusing to heal, divine fire slowly consuming him from within. Alastor stood in the corner, observing with his perpetual smile. He's dying, you should prepare yourself, dear Charlie. He's not dying, Charlie said fiercely. He's fighting, he's... Mark's eyes snapped open, glowing with silver light. His wounds sealed instantly, flesh knitting together in ways that defied hell's laws. The divine burns that had been killing him were consumed by moonlight, burned away by power that shouldn't exist in this realm. Mark sat up, and when he spoke, his voice carried an echo, not just his voice, but Khonshu's resonating through him. I'm not dying, he said. I'm becoming something new. His white suit reformed around him, but it had changed. Before, it had been cloth blessed by Khonshu. Now it was part of him, manifested from his will and the god's power. Silver crescents glowed across the fabric, and shadows that shouldn't exist in hell moved beneath its surface. He stood, and the room's temperature dropped. The very air seemed to recognize that something impossible had entered hell's domain. Charlie stared, awed and slightly frightened. Mark, what happened to you? Mark looked at his hands, feeling the dual nature of his existence now. Living and dead, divine and damned, avatar and anomaly. Khonshu gave me a choice, he said. Bind myself to hell and live, or refuse and die. I chose life. I chose the mission. Alastor's smile widened with genuine delight. Fascinating, you've become a paradox, a living dead man, a damned divine avatar. Tell me, Moon Knight, how does it feel to be an impossibility? Mark met the radio demon's ancient gaze. It hurts. Every second I feel the contradiction tearing at me, but pain is familiar, pain I can work with. He walked to the window, looking out at the pentagram. Somewhere out there, angels were planning their next attack. Overlords were scheming for control. And at the center of it all, Charlie Morningstar tried to prove that redemption was possible. The angels will come again, Mark said, stronger next time, and the overlords won't stop trying to control or eliminate me. This isn't over. No, Charlie agreed, but you're alive, that's what matters. Mark turned to face her. I'm alive, for now, and while I'm alive, I'm going to do what I was sent here to do. I'm going to protect you, Charlie, your dream, your hotel, your impossible mission. Because if Hell's princess can believe in redemption, then maybe a broken mercenary can believe in it too. Charlie's eyes filled with tears. You really mean that? I do. Outside, the diseased sky of Hell pulsed with dark energy. In heaven, angels prepared for war. In the shadows, overlords made deals and sharpened knives. The convergence was coming. And the Moon Knight was ready. The change in Mark's nature became apparent within hours. He no longer needed sleep, at least not in the way the living did. Instead, he entered a state of half-consciousness where his mind processed information while his body remained alert, frozen between rest and readiness. His wounds healed faster than before, but left silver scars that glowed faintly in darkness, marking where Khonshu's power had rewritten his flesh. Most disturbing was his ability to see Hell's true nature now. Before, the pentagram had looked chaotic but comprehensible, a twisted city of sin and excess. Now, with his hybrid perception, Mark saw the layers beneath. He saw the contracts binding demons to overlords, visible as chains of burning light. He saw the souls of the damned, hollow and empty, wandering through streets without purpose. He saw the foundation of hell itself, a structure of cosmic punishment held together by divine will and Lucifer's absent authority. And he saw the cracks. They were everywhere, hairline fractures in reality's fabric, places where the boundary between hell and other realms had worn thin. Each crack pulsed with potential energy, waiting for the right catalyst to tear them wide open. "You're staring at nothing again," Angel Dust said, breaking Mark's contemplation. The moth demon had become an unlikely companion over the past week, often joining Mark during his patrols of the hotel's perimeter. "It's creepy, like you." "Ray seeing ghosts." "Not ghosts," Mark replied, his voice carrying that faint echo of Khonshu's presence. "Structural damage. Hell is breaking apart, and nobody seems to notice or care." Angel took a drag from his cigarette, a nervous habit that served no purpose since demons didn't need to breathe. "Yeah, well, most folks down here got bigger problems than cosmic architecture, like staying alive, or staying powerful, or staying out of Valentino's reach." The name made Angel tense visibly. Mark had learned more about the overlord Valentino over the past days, a demon who controlled Hell's pleasure districts through contracts that enslaved souls more thoroughly than damnation itself. Angel Dust was one of those souls, bound by a deal made in desperation decades ago. "Why don't you break the contract?" Mark asked. Angel laughed bitterly. "Break a soul contract? You really are new here. Soul contracts are absolute, bound by Hell's fundamental laws. Only 3 ways to break one. The contract holder releases you, you fulfill the contract's terms, or the contract holder dies permanently, and overlords don't die easy." "Everything dies," Mark said flatly. "Just need the right weapon and the right moment." Angel stared at him. "You're seriously suggesting we kill Valentino, one of the most powerful overlords in Hell?" "I'm suggesting that if your freedom requires his death, then his death should be a priority." "That's," Angel paused, then smiled slightly. "That's the most insane thing anyone's ever said to me, and I once watched someone try to fistfight an angel during an extermination." Before Mark could respond, reality twisted. The air temperature dropped precipitously, and through the hotel's wall stepped a figure that made even Mark's hybrid nature recoil instinctively. Lucifer Morningstar had returned. He was shorter than Mark expected, barely 5.5 feet tall, dressed in a white suit with a red-lined cape. His face was gentle, almost kind, with blonde hair and rosy cheeks that belonged on a porcelain doll, but his eyes gave him away. Those eyes had watched creation begin, had witnessed the birth of light, had fallen from the highest grace to the deepest punishment. Those eyes held infinity and regret in equal measure. Charlie appeared instantly, rushing across the lobby. "Dad, you're back. Where have you been? It's been over a month." Lucifer smiled at his daughter, genuine warmth breaking through his cosmic weariness. "Charlie, my little duckling, I was dealing with things, complicated things, heaven things, you know how it is." "I really don't," Charlie said, frustration and relief mixing in her voice. "We've been attacked twice, Mark almost died, and the overlords are." She stopped as Lucifer's gaze landed on Mark. The devil's expression shifted from paternal warmth to something far more complex: curiosity, concern, and recognition. "Ah," Lucifer said softly, "you're the anomaly, the living human in Hell, the one causing all the fuss." He walked closer, circling Mark like an art critic examining a controversial sculpture. "Fascinating. You've been changed, bound to this realm while remaining alive. That shouldn't be possible." "Khonshu made it possible," Mark said evenly, meeting the devil's ancient gaze without flinching. Khonshu, Lucifer repeated, tasting the name. Egyptian god of the moon and vengeance, minor deity by cosmic standards, but clever, always clever, and he sent you here deliberately. Yes. To do what exactly? Mark hesitated. The truth was complicated. To protect Charlie, to prevent reality from shattering, to serve as a bridge between judgment and mercy. But saying that to Lucifer Morningstar, the architect of hell itself, felt dangerous. To protect night travelers, Mark said finally. Even in hell, there are those who need protection from those who prey on weakness. Lucifer studied him for a long moment, then laughed, not mockingly, but with genuine amusement. Oh, that's rich, a knight-errant in hell, a protector in the realm of punishment. Your god has quite the sense of irony, mortal. I'm Mark Spector, not mortal anymore, apparently. No, Lucifer agreed, you're something else now, something unprecedented, and that makes you dangerous. His expression hardened, to everyone, including my daughter. Charlie stepped between them. Dad, Mark has been helping us. He saved my life during the Overlord's attack. He's been protecting the hotel. I'm sure he has, Lucifer said, not unkindly. But protection and danger often wear the same face, Charlie. This man, this thing, is a wild card in a game with rules that predate creation. His presence here threatens the balance that keeps heaven and hell from destroying each other and everything in between. Maybe the balance deserves to be threatened, Mark said quietly. The room went silent. Even Alastor, who'd been observing from the shadows, looked impressed by Mark's audacity. Lucifer's eyes narrowed. Explain. Heaven and hell, Mark continued, exist in eternal conflict. Both sides cause suffering, heaven through rigid judgment, hell through endless punishment. Neither believes in change, in the possibility that people can be more than their worst moments. Your daughter is trying to prove otherwise. That deserves support, not opposition. You presume to lecture me about my own realm. Lucifer's voice carried an edge now, a reminder that this gentle-faced being had once commanded armies against heaven itself. I'm not lecturing, I'm observing, and what I observe is that hell is breaking, the boundaries weaken, the overlords grow ambitious, heaven grows aggressive, and in the middle of it all, one person is trying to do something impossible, offer hope to the hopeless. If you can't see the value in that, then maybe you've been down here too long. For a heartbeat, Mark thought he'd gone too far. Lucifer's expression darkened and the room's temperature dropped further. Power radiated from the devil, ancient and terrible, a reminder that this being had helped shape existence itself. Then Lucifer laughed again, this time with something like respect. You have courage, Mark Spector, stupid courage, but courage nonetheless, and you're not entirely wrong. Hell is changing. I've been in heaven, negotiating with the seraphim, trying to prevent what's coming, but I fear I'm too late. What's coming? Charlie asked, worry evident in her voice. Lucifer turned to his daughter, his expression sad. War, duckling, real war, not the annual exterminations or territorial disputes between overlords, full cosmic conflict between heaven and hell. The seraphim believe that hell has grown too powerful, that demons reaching into other dimensions threatens all of creation. They're planning a final extermination, an invasion meant to cleanse hell completely. The implications were staggering. Not just culling demon populations, but total extinction, genocide on a cosmic scale. When? Mark asked. Soon, perhaps weeks, perhaps days. The seraphim wouldn't give me specifics. Lucifer looked at Mark with something approaching sympathy, which means your presence here is even more complicated than I thought. Heaven wants you dead because you're a living soul in hell, but they also might need you alive if they're planning invasion. You're proof that the boundaries can be crossed safely, that living beings can survive in damnation. So I'm either a target or a strategic asset, Mark said. Neither option appeals. Welcome to cosmic politics, Lucifer replied dryly. Everything is leverage, everyone is a bargaining chip. He turned to Charlie. You need to shut down the hotel, evacuate anyone seeking redemption. When heaven's armies come, they won't distinguish between demons trying to change and demons embracing damnation. They'll kill everything. No, Charlie said firmly. Charlie. No, she stepped forward, her own power flaring, an echo of her father's might combined with something uniquely hers. I won't abandon this mission. I won't accept that redemption is impossible, and I won't let heaven commit genocide just because they're afraid of change. Lucifer looked at his daughter with pride and sorrow mixing in his ancient eyes. Then you'll need an army, because heaven is bringing theirs. She has one, Mark said. Me. Lucifer scoffed. One hybrid avatar against heaven's legions. That's not an army, that's suicide. Then I'll die standing between heaven and this hotel, Mark replied. I've died before, didn't take the first time. Stephen's voice, are we really committing to this, to war with heaven itself? Jake, we committed the moment Khonshu bound us here. Might as well go down fighting. Mark looked at Charlie, at this young woman trying to prove that damnation wasn't eternal, that even the damned deserved a second chance. He thought about his own redemption, or lack thereof, and about Khonshu's words about choice and change. I'm staying, he said simply, whatever comes. Charlie's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. Lucifer sighed deeply. Then I suppose I'm staying too. Can't let my daughter face heaven alone. He looked around at the assembled group. Mark, Charlie, Alastor, Husk, Angel Dust, even Small Nifty. This is quite possibly the worst army in history, but I suppose we've faced worse odds. Have we? Husk asked skeptically. No, Lucifer admitted. This is probably going to be an absolute disaster, but at least it'll be interesting. Alastor's smile widened. Now this is entertainment. The devil, his daughter, a hybrid avatar, and hell's most dysfunctional hotel staff standing against heaven's wrath. History will remember this, assuming anyone survives to write it. Outside, the diseased sky began to change. Golden light bled through the red and black clouds, beautiful and terrible, heaven's armies mustering, preparing for invasion. The war was coming, and the Hazbin Hotel stood at ground zero. Mark touched his crescent blade. Feeling Khonshu's blessing pulse through it, he'd been a mercenary, a killer, a broken man seeking purpose. Now he was something else, a bridge between worlds, a defender of the impossible, a weapon pointed at heaven itself. He should have been terrified. Instead, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose, preparation for war consumed the next 3 days. Lucifer, despite his casual demeanor, proved to be a master strategist. He transformed the Hazbin Hotel into a fortress, reinforcing its structure with angelic and demonic power woven together, something that shouldn't work but did under his skilled manipulation. Walls became impenetrable barriers. Windows became observation points that could see across dimensions. The lobby became a command center where Hell's most unlikely alliance coordinated their defense. Mark trained constantly, pushing his hybrid body to its limits. He sparred with Lucifer, who fought with the casual grace of someone who'd invented combat. He studied Hell's geography with Alastor, learning where the dimensional barriers were thinnest, where Heaven's forces would most likely breach. He worked with Charlie to establish evacuation routes for civilians, demons who'd seek shelter when the angels came. Because they would come, that certainty hung over everything like a sword suspended by thread. On the third night, Husk found Mark on the hotel's roof, looking up at Hell's twisted sky. The cat demon carried 2 bottles of something that looked toxic. Figured you could use a drink, Husk said, offering 1 bottle. Mark took it, sniffed it, and grimaced. What is this? Hell's finest rotgut, tastes like burning regret, but it gets the job done. Husk settled beside him. You don't have to do this, you know, fight for us. You could run, find a way back to Earth, leave Hell's problems to Hell. I can't, Mark said simply. Because of your God. Because of me. Mark took a drink, and Husk was right, it tasted awful. I've spent my entire life running from who I was, mercenary, killer, broken man with fractured mind. I let Khonshu give me purpose because I couldn't find it myself. But here now, this isn't about divine mission, this is about choice. I choose to stand with Charlie. I choose to fight for the idea that redemption is possible, because if it's possible for demons, maybe it's possible for me too. Husk was quiet for a moment. That's probably the sanest thing I've heard anyone say in this insane place. They drank in silence, watching the golden light grow stronger in Hell's sky. Heaven's armies were massing, visible now as distant figures made of pure radiance, gathering in formations that span miles. You ever wonder if we're the bad guys? Husk asked. We're demons, Hell's residents, the damned. Maybe Heaven's right to want us gone. I've killed 47 people, Mark replied. I've done terrible things in the name of justice, but I've also protected innocents, saved lives, tried to make the world slightly less dark. Good and evil aren't as simple as heaven and hell. They're choices we make every moment, and right now heaven is choosing genocide. That makes them wrong, regardless of what we are. Deep, Husk muttered, you should write philosophy books. I'd rather fight. Yeah, me too. Movement below caught Mark's attention. In the hotel's courtyard, Charlie was talking with a group of demons, residents and refugees who'd heard about the coming conflict and had nowhere else to go. She was organizing them, assigning tasks, offering hope even as catastrophe loomed. She really believes it, doesn't she? Husk said. The redemption thing, it's not an act. No, Mark agreed. She genuinely believes everyone deserves a second chance, even us. Especially us, a new voice added. Both Mark and Husk turned to find Lucifer standing behind them, having appeared without sound or warning. The devil looked tired, not physically, but existentially, like someone carrying weight for too long. She got that from her mother, Lucifer continued, moving to join them at the roof's edge. Lilith always believed in second chances, in the possibility of change. I thought it was naive, dangerous even, but watching Charlie fight for that belief, he smiled sadly. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe the naive thing is thinking people can't change. You're the devil, Mark said. You invented eternal punishment. Now you're saying you might have been wrong about its permanence. Lucifer laughed, bitter and weary. I didn't invent hell. I was cast into it, and I made it what it is out of anger and hurt. But anger and hurt make poor architects. They build prisons, not kingdoms. Charlie sees what hell could be, not paradise, but a place where mistakes don't define eternity, where punishment has purpose beyond suffering. He looked at Mark directly. Your God sent you here to protect her, to help her vision survive. That makes you my ally, Mark Spector, and I protect my allies. Even if protecting me means fig. Each thing heaven. Especially then, Lucifer replied. Heaven cast me down for questioning their perfection. Now they want to destroy my daughter for offering imperfect beings a chance at perfection. That hypocrisy ends tomorrow. Tomorrow, Husk sat up straighter. They're coming tomorrow. Dawn, Lucifer confirmed, or what passes for dawn in hell. The Seraphim sent a formal declaration of war, very proper, very official. They're giving us time to prepare, which means they're absolutely confident they'll win regardless of our preparations. Overconfidence is a weakness, Mark said. Only if you exploit it, Lucifer agreed, which we will. I've been planning this defense for longer than you know. Charlie thinks I was in heaven negotiating peace, but I was actually studying their army structure, identifying weaknesses, learning their tactics. Tomorrow, when they come with overwhelming force expecting quick victory, we're going to teach heaven something they've forgotten. What's that? Lucifer's smile was sharp as broken stars. That hell fights dirty. The next morning, if hell's eternal twilight could have morning, they came. Mark stood in the hotel's courtyard, his white suit pristine, his crescent blade ready as the sky tore open. It wasn't a metaphor. Reality literally ripped, golden light pouring through wounds in existence as heaven's armies descended. They were beautiful and terrible, thousands of angels in perfect formation, their armor gleaming, their weapons crackling with holy fire. At their head flew the seraphim, beings so bright that looking directly at them caused physical pain. The lead seraphim's voice boomed across hell. By order of the throne, this realm is condemned. All demons will be purged. All structures will be razed. Hell will be cleansed and sealed forever. Lucifer stepped forward, his small form somehow dominating the battlefield through sheer presence. This realm is mine by divine decree. You have no authority here. You forfeited authority when you fell, the seraphim replied. Heaven reclaims what was always hers. Then come and take it, Lucifer said quietly. The armies crashed together like waves against cliffs. Mark moved through combat like poetry written in violence. His blade sang through angel after angel, Khonshu's blessing cutting through divine armor as if it were paper. His hybrid nature let him see the angels' attack patterns before they struck, gave him speed beyond human limitations, allowed him to exist in the space between life and death where normal rules didn't apply. Around him, hell's defenders fought with desperate fury. Alastor's shadows tore through angelic ranks, reality warping around his attacks. Charlie unleashed demonic fire that burned even holy beings. Lucifer himself fought like the general he'd once been, coordinating defense with precision that spoke of eons of experience. But there were too many angels. For every 10 they killed, 20 more descended through the tiers in reality. The courtyard became a killing field, blood and ichor mixing on ground that had never known such carnage. Mark found himself fighting alongside Angel Dust, the moth demon using 8 arms to fire weapons in all directions. "This is insane," Angel shouted over the chaos. "We can't win this." "We don't have to win," Mark replied, cutting down another angel. "We just have to survive until..." He stopped as understanding dawned. This was a distraction. The full-scale assault was meant to draw attention while something else happened. But what? Mark's hybrid sight kicked in, letting him see beyond the immediate battle. He looked up at the tiers in reality, seeing how they pulsed and expanded with each angel that passed through. The invasion wasn't just about killing demons, it was about breaking hell completely. Each breach weakened the dimensional boundaries further. Heaven wasn't planning to cleanse hell, they were planning to collapse it, to fold this entire realm out of existence and seal it away forever. "Charlie," Mark shouted, spotting her across the battlefield. "The breaches, they're trying to collapse hell itself." Charlie looked up, her demonic sight confirming what Mark had realized. Horror crossed her face. If hell collapses while people are still here, they'll be erased, Lucifer finished, appearing beside them. His expression was grim. Not killed, erased from existence entirely, retroactively unmade. "Can we stop it?" Charlie asked desperately. Lucifer looked at the expanding tiers, calculating rapidly. "Maybe, if we can close the breaches, seal the dimensional wounds before they reach critical mass, but that would require power I don't have alone." Mark understood immediately. You need an anchor, someone who exists between dimensions, who can stabilize the boundaries. "Yes," Lucifer confirmed, "someone exactly like you." "What do I have to do?" Lucifer met his gaze. "Sacrifice everything you are. Your hybrid nature makes you a bridge between Rhea. LMS, if you channel that, if you become the seal itself, you can close the breaches, but it will lock you in place, permanently. You'll exist as a living barrier between heaven and hell, conscious but trapped, feeling every moment of eternity pass while unable to move or change or die." Stephen's voice, horrified, "That's not sacrifice, that's torture." "Jake, there has to be another way." Mark looked at Charlie, at this young woman fighting for impossible hope. He looked at the demons defending the hotel, at the refugees cowering in shelter, at hell itself teetering on the edge of oblivion. He thought about Khonshu's words, choose. This was the choice, this was the moment the moon god had sent him to face. "Tell me how," Mark said. "Mark, no," Charlie grabbed his arm. "There has to be another way." "There isn't," Mark said gently, "and even if there was, this is what I choose. I choose to protect night travelers even in hell, especially in hell. This is my purpose." Lucifer's expression held respect and sorrow. "It requires total commitment. You'll need to open yourself completely to both realms simultaneously, embrace your living essence and your hell-bound nature at once. Then channel that duality into the breaches, using your existence as the bridge that seals them." "Will it work?" "Probably," Lucifer admitted. "Maybe. If it doesn't, you'll be torn apart across dimensions and we'll all die anyway. So really, what do you have to lose?" Mark smiled despite everything. "Your optimism is inspiring." He walked to the center of the courtyard, to the point where most breaches converged. Around him, the battle raged, but he blocked it out, focusing inward on the contradiction of his existence. Living but in hell, divine but damned. One man, 3 minds, bound to 2 realms. He was the bridge, he had always been the bridge. Mark released the control he'd maintained since Khonshu changed him. Let the living part of his nature surge forward, let the hell-bound aspect rise up, let them collide inside him, creating energy that shouldn't exist. Pain exploded through every nerve. His body began to glow, not with silver light or hellfire, but with something that combined both. Reality bent around him as his existence asserted itself against the laws of nature. The tears in the sky began to pulse in response, drawn to his power. "Now," Lucifer shouted, "channel it upward." Mark raised his arms and let everything he was flow outward. The energy poured from him like a river breaking through a dam, streaming upward toward the breaches. Where his power touched the tears, they began to seal, not healing, but being stitched closed by his very existence woven through them. It was working. It was killing him. Mark felt himself being pulled apart, stretched across dimensions, his consciousness spreading thin as he became the seal Lucifer described. He could feel heaven on one side, hell on the other, and himself between them, a living barrier, aware and trapped. Charlie's voice, distant. "Mark, stop, you're dying." Not dying, Mark managed through the agony. Changing again. The last breach sealed with a sound like reality sighing in relief. The golden tears closed, heaven's armies retreating as their invasion path collapsed. Silence fell across the battlefield. Mark collapsed to his knees, his body still glowing with that impossible hybrid light. He was alive, still breathing, still conscious. But changed. Fundamentally, irreversibly changed. He could feel the boundaries now, constantly, aware of every point where hell touched other dimensions. He was woven into hell's structure, a permanent part of its foundation. He couldn't leave, couldn't escape, could only exist forever between worlds. Khonshu's voice, faint but present. "Well done, my fist. You have become the eternal guardian, the moon knight of the boundaries. There is no greater service." Charlie knelt beside him, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry, you shouldn't have had to." "It's okay," Mark said, surprising himself by meaning it. "This is what I choose, what I've always chosen, to stand between the darkness and those who need protection. Now I just stand there, permanently." Lucifer approached, his expression somber. "The seal will hold. Heaven can't invade again without going through you first, and hell can't expand beyond its boundaries without your permission. You've created balance, Mark Spector, at the cost of your freedom." "Freedom's overrated," Mark replied, trying to stand and finding his legs would barely support him. "I was never free anyway, just chose different chains." Around them, hell's defenders gathered, Alastor, Husk, Angel Dust, demons who'd fought and survived. They looked at Mark with something approaching reverence. "You saved us," one demon whispered. "A human saved hell." "I'm not human anymore," Mark said. "I'm not sure what I am." "You're a hero," Charlie said firmly. "The first hero hell has ever had." Mark smiled weakly. "Then hell's standards are pretty low." He felt consciousness slipping, exhaustion from the transformation overwhelming even his hybrid nature. As darkness claimed him, he heard Khonshu's final whisper. "Sleep, my fist, you have earned rest, and when you wake, your true mission begins." Mark woke to silver light. Not the diseased twilight of hell or the golden radiance of heaven, but pure moonlight, impossible and beautiful, filling his vision with cool luminescence. He was in his room at the Hazbin Hotel, though he didn't remember being brought here. The room had changed, though. Crescent moons were carved into every surface, the walls, the ceiling, even the floor, as if reality itself acknowledged what he'd become. Charlie sat in a chair beside his bed, her head resting on folded arms, asleep from exhaustion. Someone had placed a blanket over her shoulders. Mark sat up slowly, every movement reminding him of his changed state. He could feel the boundaries between dimensions like phantom limbs, extensions of his awareness stretching across existence. Hell's foundation pulsed around him, and he realized he was literally woven into it now. He couldn't leave because he was part of the structure itself. The door opened quietly, and Lucifer entered carrying 2 cups of something steaming. "You're awake," the devil said softly, mindful of his sleeping daughter. "I wasn't sure you'd ever wake. Most beings don't survive becoming foundational elements of reality." "How long?" Mark asked, his voice rough. 3 weeks, during which time interesting developments have occurred." Lucifer handed him 1 cup tea, surprisingly normal and comforting. "Heaven has formally withdrawn their invasion force. The Seraphim are displeased about the seal you created, but they can't break it without destroying you, which would restart the war. Stalemate achieved through your sacrifice." And hell, also displeased for different reasons. The overlords lost their ability to reach into other dimensions without your permission. Several contracts became unenforceable. Power structures are shifting. Lucifer smiled. "You've disrupted centuries of established order in 3 weeks of unconsciousness. Impressive." Mark sipped the tea, processing this. "So I've made enemies on both sides." Naturally, balance never pleases extremists, but you've also made allies, demons who see the value in stability, angels who recognize that invasion wasn't justice, just genocide, and Charlie, Lucifer, glanced at his daughter. You've given her something she's never had before, proof that her mission can succeed, that redemption is possible even in hell. I'm not redeemed, Mark said automatically. Aren't you? Lucifer challenged. You were a mercenary who killed for money, then a broken avatar who killed for a god's mission. Now you're a guardian who sacrificed everything to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. If that's not redemption, what is? Stephen's voice gentle, he might have a point. Jake, or he's just good at making horrifying situations sound noble. Mark set down his tea and looked at Lucifer seriously. Why did Khonshu really send me here? What was his actual plan? Lucifer was quiet for a long moment, then smiled sadly. You want honesty? I don't know. Gods operate on timescales that make eons look like heartbeats. Maybe he saw this exact outcome and orchestrated everything toward it. Maybe he just threw a wild card into play and waited to see what happened. With divine beings, the difference between careful planning and inspired improvisation is often indistinguishable. That's not reassuring. It wasn't meant to be. Lucifer stood, preparing to leave. What matters is what you choose to do now. You're the Moon Knight of the boundaries, the living seal between hell and everything else. That role can be passive, just exist and maintain the barrier. Or it can be active, use your position to shape how hell interacts with other realms, what demons can do, how redemption might actually work. You want me to help run hell. I want you to help change it, Lucifer corrected. Charlie's dream of redeeming demons can't work under the old system. But with you controlling the boundaries, we can create new rules, new possibilities, make hell less a prison and more he paused, searching for words, a rehabilitation center, like Charlie always wanted. Mark looked at Charlie, still sleeping beside his bed despite the discomfort, staying close because she cared. He thought about all the demons he'd met, Husk with his cynical kindness, Angel Dust fighting against his contract, even Alastor with his mysterious agenda. They were trapped here, but that didn't mean they couldn't change. I'll consider it, Mark said finally, but I work my way, no compromises on justice. I wouldn't expect otherwise. Lucifer moved to the door, then paused. One more thing, your God sent a message while you were unconscious, said to tell you, the moon sea. TS and rises, but the night remains. Keep watch, my fist. Then Lucifer was gone, leaving Mark alone with Charlie and his thoughts. 6 months later, hell had transformed. Not physically, the pentagram still looked like organized chaos, and demons still schemed and fought for power. But fundamentally, structurally, hell had changed. Mark had established the Boundary Protocol, a system where demons seeking redemption could appeal to him directly for opportunities to prove their change. He couldn't release them from hell, that wasn't his authority. But he could ease restrictions, allow them access to memories of their living lives, even grant temporary passage to witness, but not interact with the world they'd lost. It was small, it was imperfect, but it was something. The Hazbin Hotel had expanded, its population growing as word spread that redemption might be more than just Charlie's fantasy. Mark spent his days training new arrivals in self-control and his nights patrolling the boundaries, ensuring no demon breached them without permission and no angel crossed them with hostile intent. He'd become exactly what Khonshu said, the eternal guardian. On this particular evening, Mark stood on the hotel's roof, looking up at hell's sky. The moon was visible now. He'd made that happen, using his authority over boundaries to allow moonlight to penetrate hell's perpetual gloom. Khonshu's presence was stronger because of it, their connection more stable. Still brooding, Angel Dust joined him, as had become routine. You know, for a guy who saved all of hell, you spend a lot of time looking miserable. I'm not miserable, Mark said, just adjusting. To being literally part of hell, yeah, that'd be an adjustment. Angel lit a cigarette. For what it's worth, things are better because of you. Valentino's been weaker since you restricted his ability to make new contracts. Other demons have started questioning their overlords. Change is happening. Slowly. That's how real change works, Angel replied. The fast stuff never sticks. They stood in comfortable silence, watching hell's twisted cityscape. In the distance, Mark could see the glow of other redemption centers, demons inspired by Charlie's success, attempting their own versions. Some would fail, some would succeed, all of it mattered. Charlie appeared through the roof access, carrying a folder. "Mark, I've got 3 new applications for boundary passage, and Heaven sent another formal complaint about you letting demons visit Earth." "Heaven complains about everything I do," Mark said, taking the folder. "It means you're doing something right," Charlie replied cheerfully. "If both Heaven and Hell's old guard hate your decisions, you're probably making the correct ones." Mark reviewed the applications, 3 demons who'd completed Charlie's full rehabilitation program and wanted to see their families one more time. The requests were heartbreaking in their simplicity, just to see, not to interact, to know their loved ones had moved on, had found peace. He approved all 3. "You're getting soft," Alastor's voice came from the shadows. The radio demon materialized, his smile as permanent as ever. "Granting demon wishes, allowing redemption, weakening Hell's traditional power structures. The old you would have called this naive." "The old me would have been wrong," Mark replied. "Power without purpose is just violence, and violence without justice is just cruelty." "How philosophical," Alastor purred. "You've become quite the reformer, Moon Knight. I wonder if your god intended this outcome." "Does it matter?" Mark asked. "I'm here, I'm doing this. Intention is less important than action." Alastor studied him with those ancient, calculating eyes. "You're right, of course, which is why I've decided to fully support your boundary reforms. They serve my interests as well as yours." "What interests are those?" "Chaos," Alastor replied cheerfully. "Lovely, productive chaos. The old order is crumbling, new power structures are forming, and nobody knows what comes next. It's delightful." He vanished as suddenly as he'd appeared, leaving only radio static and laughter. Charlie shook her head. "I still don't trust him." "Neither do I," Mark agreed, "but he's been helpful in his way." "Because it serves him." "Everyone acts from self-interest," Mark said. "The question is whether their self-interest aligns with good outcomes. Alastor wants chaos, but the chaos he wants includes your redemption program succeeding, so we work together." Charlie smiled. "You've become a politician." "I've become a lot of things I never expected." They stood together, the Moon Knight of the Boundaries and the Princess of Hell, looking out over the realm they were slowly, painstakingly changing. Behind them in the hotel, demons laughed and argued and hoped. Above them, moonlight fell through Hell's sky, impossible and beautiful. Around them, the boundaries between realms held strong, mate. Aimed by Mark's eternal vigilance. Khonshu's voice whispered through the moonlight, "You have done well, my fist, better than I dared hope. Hell has its first true guardian, and the night travelers, even those in eternal darkness, have their protector." Mark smiled. "Is this what you planned, what you wanted when you sent me here?" "I wanted you to find purpose," Khonshu replied. "Whether through my design or your choices you have, that is enough." The connection faded, leaving Mark alone with his companions and his mission. He was the Moon Knight, avatar of Khonshu, guardian of Hell's boundaries, a man fractured into 3 minds, bound to damnation while remaining alive, serving as the bridge between judgment and mercy. He was exactly what he needed to be. And for the first time in his entire existence, living and beyond, Mark Spector felt something approaching peace. Epilogue: Legacy of the Broken Moon. Word count 1440. In a universe where fate made a single mistake, everything changed. 50 years after Mark Spector became Hell's guardian, the pentagram looked different. Not in architecture, demons were traditionalists about their sin, but in atmosphere. There was less random violence, more purpose, something that might almost be called community among the damned. The Hazbin Hotel had become the Hazbin Institute, a sprawling complex where thousands of demons underwent rehabilitation simultaneously. Charlie had aged gracefully, her idealism tempered by experience but never extinguished. She'd become exactly what her title suggested, Hell's true princess, ruling alongside her father with wisdom and compassion that transformed damnation into something approaching justice. Mark stood where he always stood, on the boundary between realms, existing as the living seal that kept dimensions separate. Time affected him strangely now. His body didn't age, but his mind accumulated centuries of experience, memories layering upon memories until distinguishing between decades became difficult. Stephen and Jake were still present, though quieter now. Less fighting for control, more cooperation. The fractured parts of Mark's psyche had found balance in their shared eternal mission. "You're thinking about Earth again," a voice said. Mark turned to find Lucifer approaching, looking exactly as he had 50 years ago. Immortality suited some beings. "Always," Mark admitted. "I wonder what's happened there, whether anyone remembers the mercenary who disappeared in Cairo." "The internet remembers everything," Lucifer replied. "I check occasionally. You're a cold case, disappeared without a trace. Some people think you died, others think you ran. A few conspiracy theorists think you were abducted by aliens." He smiled. "They're not entirely wrong about the abduction part." "Close enough," Mark agreed. They stood together watching hell's eternal twilight. Despite everything, despite the transformation and sacrifice and eternal duty, Mark had found something in this damned realm. Purpose, real purpose, not imposed by a god or driven by guilt, but chosen consciously every single day. "Do you regret it?" Lucifer asked, "the sacrifice becoming what you are?" Mark considered this seriously. "Sometimes, when I feel the boundaries strain and remember that I'm holding two dimensions apart through sheer force of will, when I can't sleep or rest or ever truly relax because doing so might let something slip through, when I remember what freedom felt like. But then I see demons graduate from Charlie's program, see them achieve redemption, move beyond their damnation, see hell becoming less a place of eternal torture and more a place of hard-won transformation, and I remember why I chose this." Mark looked at Lucifer. "I'm not free, but I'm not useless either. That matters." Lucifer nodded. "You've become something unprecedented, the first being to exist permanently between damnation and divinity. Scholars in heaven debate what you represent. Demons tell stories about the moon knight who guards their boundaries. You're becoming myth, Mark Spector." "Myths aren't real," Mark said dryly. "Aren't they?" Lucifer countered. "You were a mercenary, then an avatar. Now you're the living proof that damnation isn't permanent, that even hell can change. If that's not mythic, what is?" Before Mark could respond, reality rippled. Not a breach, he would have felt that instantly, but something else. Someone attempting to communicate across dimensional barriers. Khonshu's presence manifested, stronger than it had been in decades. The moon god appeared as a column of silver light, his voice resonating through existence itself. "My fist, my vengeance, my eternal guardian, I bring news." "What news?" Mark asked, immediately alert. "Heaven has formally recognized your redemption. After 50 years of observation, the seraphim have declared that Mark Spector has transcended his mortal sins through service and sacrifice. You have been offered entrance to Parad. Shod you choose to accept." The words hung in the air like a sword about to fall. Lucifer looked genuinely shocked. "Heaven is offering you redemption. That's unprecedented. They never offer redemption, especially not to souls bound to hell." "I'm not bound to hell," Mark said slowly, understanding dawning. "I'm bound to the boundary, to the space between. Heaven recognizes that distinction." "Correct," Khonshu confirmed. "You may leave your post. Another guardian will be found. Another solution will be devised. Your service has been completed. You may rest." Paradise, true rest, release from eternal vigilance. Everything Mark had once believed was forever out of reach. All he had to do was accept. Stephen's voice, "We could be free, actually, finally free. Jake, after everything we've done, everything we've become, we could just stop." Mark thought about heaven, about perfect peace, about reunion with those he'd lost, about the end of pain and duty and struggle. Then he thought about hell, about Charlie's continued work, about the demons still seeking redemption, about the boundaries that needed constant maintenance, the dimensions that required eternal vigilance to keep separate. About the mission that would remain whether he was there or not. "No," Mark said. Lucifer blinked. "No, you're refusing paradise." "I'm refusing to abandon my post," Mark clarified. He looked up at Khonshu's manifestation. "You said another guardian will be found, but it took 50 years to transform me into what I am. How long will it take to create another? And what happens to hell in the meantime? What happens to the demons working toward redemption if the boundaries fail?" "That is not your concern," Khonshu replied. "You have EARNED rest." "I didn't do this to earn anything," Mark said firmly. I did this because it was right, because people needed protection. That need hasn't changed, so neither does my answer. I'm staying. You would refuse paradise, refuse the ultimate reward for your service. Yes, Mark said simply, because my service isn't about reward, it's about purpose. And my purpose is here, maintaining these boundaries, protecting both hell and heaven from each other. That doesn't end just because I've been offered an exit. Khonshu was silent for a long moment. Then his presence swelled, filling the space with overwhelming power and something that might have been pride. You have become more than my avatar, Mark SBCTOR. You have become your own being, making your own choices for your own reasons. This is the final lesson. The ultimate redemption is not leaving the darkness, but choosing to remain in IT to help others find light. The moon god's presence began to fade. I release you from your oath to me. You are no longer my fist of vengeance. You are simply Mark SBCTOR, guardian of the boundaries, servant of your own conscience. May your eternal vigil bring you the peace you refuse to claim. Then Khonshu was gone, leaving Mark standing alone with Lucifer. The devil looked at him with something approaching awe. You just refused paradise. You're clinically insane. Probably, Mark agreed. I am three people in one body after all. Sanity was never our strong suit. Charlie needs to hear about this, Lucifer said, already turning to leave. She'll want to, I don't know, throw you a party or write a poem or something equally sentimental. Tell her later, Mark said. Right now I have work to do. He returned his attention to the boundaries, to the eternal maintenance required to keep dimensions separate. The work was endless, thankless, and absolutely necessary. It was exactly what he'd chosen. Hell continued to change, slowly transforming from a place of punishment to a place of possibility. Charlie's Institute graduated thousands of demons, each one proof that redemption wasn't just possible but achievable. Heaven grudgingly accepted Hell's transformation, recognizing that stability served everyone better than eternal conflict. The exterminations ended permanently, replaced by diplomatic exchanges that would have seemed impossible mere decades before. And through it all, Mark Spector stood watch. The Moon Knight of the boundaries, the guardian between worlds, the man who refused paradise because duty mattered more than reward. Demons told his story to new arrivals, how a living human had fallen into hell, had sacrificed everything to protect the damned, had been offered paradise and refused it to continue his mission. He became legend, myth, the ultimate symbol of selfless service. He was no longer just Mark Spector, he was something more. Hope incarnate, proof that choice mattered more than circumstance. Living testament that redemption came not from divine decree, but from consistent action toward being better than you were. On a night like any other, though all nights in hell were essentially identical, Mark stood on his eternal post, feeling the boundaries pulse with the rhythm of exist. NCE itself. You know, he said to the empty air, Stephen was right about one thing. We really are just rebuilt. Different than we were, but not worse, maybe better. Stephen's voice, after all these years still present, took you long enough to admit it. Jake, better late than never. Mark smiled, yeah, better late than never. The moon rose over hell, a permanent fixture now, Mark's final gift to the damned realm. Its silver light washed over the pentagram, over the Institute, over thousands of demons working toward redemption. And in that light, Mark Spector stood eternal watch. The guardian, the bridge, the moon knight who chose hell over heaven because someone had to. In a universe where fate made a single mistake, one man corrected it through choice, through sacrifice, through refusing to accept that damnation had to be eternal. And hell, impossibly, became a place of hope.